A. Martinez. Okay, excuse absences, floor is open. Senator Novoselsky,
I motion to excuse Senator Cristiani until 7:15 p.m.
there's been a motion to excuse Senator Cristiani until 7:15 p.m. Is there a second? Second by Senator Wang, one discussion. I recall the question, objection to the question. Consent, objection to consent, seeing none, motion passes. You can just bundle and approve these two, there's a bunch on there. Senator Onishi,
Motion to bundle and approve all of these absences.
there's been a motion to bundle and approve all two absences, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Littlepage, we're now in discussion. I recall the question, objection to the question.
Consent.
Consent, objection to consent. Seeing none, motion passes. Floor is open. Okay, moving into acceptance of proxies. Floor is open. Senator Carlson,
Motion to accept Dan Siddiqui as proxy for Senator Mandari.
there's a motion to accept Dan Siddiqui as proxy for Senator Mendares. Is there a second? Second by Yamanishi, we're in discussion.
Call the question.
I call the question, objection to the question.
Consent.
Consent, objection to consent. Seeing none, motion passes. Okay, external reports. Chancellor's representative. UCPD representative. GSA representative. USM Gov Board. IBCSD. Okay, new business. A bill to establish controls compliance office. The first, Sal.
So as you all know, the legal code of the AI is complex by itself, but the financial policy are at another level. A lot of people, frankly myself, at sometimes are having trouble to fully comprehend what the financial policy actually means. So I believe it will be very important and crucial for us to set up a specific office that have knowledge about financial policies, which then they can detect discrepancies and help us to achieve compliance with the financial policies. I yield.
The second, Senator Carlson.
I yield to everything Senator Shaw said.
Floor is open. Senator Shaw.
I just wanted to ask, is this based on the Controls and Compliance Committee that was created last year or not? Because on one hand, it seems to be using the name and a few other things, but on the other hand, the legal code is structured pretty different.
Senator Shaw.
So the majority of the contents was proposed by David Junior Sim, which I list as student sponsor. To my understanding, there are no specific reference to the Control and Compliance Committee last year, but if there are similarities, then I think it's taking the license and great has experience of the committee and try to make it permanent. That's my guess. Yeah.
Floor is open. Senator Rowe.
It looks great, guys. I left a couple comments, but I think it's a really good concept and good work.
Floor is open. Senator Shaw.
Yeah, I have quite a few kind of technical points that I want to get hashed out before this got admitted into legal code. But the broad outline is something I'm happy is getting incorporated into legal code. I think it might be helpful for people's context that weren't here last year. Last year, we created something called the Controls and Compliance Committee. And the purpose of that was just to establish what was going on financially in terms of the level of compliance that we were seeing within specifically the expenditures of AS funds that are designated. So it doesn't mean just BCUs, that also means whether RCOs are being compliant to the funding that they're given, the rules of which the funding they're given is stipulated through F&B. That's one thing that I'd want to see a little bit more emphasized in this legislation. But yeah, I think it's great.
Senator Novoselsky.
I agree. I also think this is great. This is actually perfect that this is being brought up as well this week. Because in F&B, we actually had a discussion on honing our finance policies. So thank you for doing this. And I yield.
Senator Littlepage, and one second.
Under section 2 HI, I think, it says that the office has the power to subpoena Duce Tecton. What does that apply to? Like any personal documents or? Because giving the office an ability to subpoena fellow students, that could be a bit of a overstep in my opinion.
Senator Zhang.
So the subpoena, and I'm happy to make it more clear in the legislation itself. But the intention was to only submit their AI stuff. So just like our AS email, those stuff are all subject to the Freedom of Information Act. So everything AS and they believe are related to the suspected discrepancy of financial policy, they can require that. Anything outside of AS, no.
That should,
Senator Lopez.
that should probably be clarified more.
Senator Shalma.
Yep, touching more on this, the language that the original Controls and Compliance Committee legislation used didn't use the term subpoena because it has not just legal connotations, but also a legal meaning that is not encompassed here. This is not a subpoena, this is not a court. And so I shudder away from using that term at all. I'd rather say something like power to issue requests for documents pertinent to information, which captured the same intended meaning, but doesn't carry with it the baggage of some adjudication that we don't want to be involved in.
Where's open? Senator Zhang.
That's a wonderful suggestion. I'll make sure to change it.
Oh, Senator Lynn.
I motion to table a bill to establish the Controls and Compliance Office.
There's been a motion to table a bill to establish the Controls and Compliance Office for 1 week. Is there a second? Second by Little Page, without discussion. All right, call question, objection, call question.
Consent.
Objection, consent. Seeing none, motion passes. Yeah, sorry. Okay, floor is open in new business. Who's second the last question? That was Little Page, right? Okay, moving into public forum. Is there anyone on the list?
There is one.
Is it Jake? Okay.
Quick question.
Yeah, yeah.
Sarah, though. My understanding is that we're unable to live stream. Due to Zoom not letting us live stream.
Yeah.
And accessibility issues have been made in the past. And so I just wanted to either put it on the record that we are trying and or the chair or the Senate wants us to do something differently. What's being done right now is being recorded to be uploaded into our YouTube channel after the fact. But that does disallow folks from witnessing or participating from wherever they are. So just wanted to make sure you were aware.
Yeah, Holly just told me, and they just sent an email out to the whole association. Senator Rupp.
Oh, that's good. I was gonna say we could also put it on our Instagram story, if that's helpful, and then put it in the record, if
Oh,
we like actually can't get it on there. I know that's like an ongoing issue. Can we literally like not live stream it from Zoom?
That's my impression. I'm not the one doing it or attempting to do it. What I am sharing though is that folks that are unable to be here because we want to be able to interact with you. And so you may want to take a break until you figure an alternative out. Or, I don't know, just thought I'd put it on the record. for you.
Thoughts? Senator Shalma.
Are there people in the Zoom waiting?
I'm not monitoring it. Senator Zhao might be more equipped to answer that. Or we could ask Holly online.
Senator Zhang.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Holly, please.
Hi, yeah, thank you for recognizing me. So it's just myself and Michael that are on Zoom right now. I think that it's an issue with the way the account is set up or something. The button to physically live stream is just not there. So we can try and switch accounts, like go to a different Zoom link if you're open to distributing a different link, which I'm happy to send that message out. Or we can continue recording, whichever you like. Just let me know what direction you'd like to move in.
And if it's just the two of you, I don't see the issue. But we could just watch another Zoom link, because, oh, yes, Senator Rupp.
Well, I feel like there's probably only 2 people in there because like, isn't it? Or the, like, to everyone outside of the association. Cause it's not on Facebook, but just like how. I would assume that people usually like
Yeah.
watches it.
So why don't we send a new link through Facebook and
Yeah.
we have
Maybe
minutes.
Post the link on our Facebook so that people can join us in, is that?
Holly, is that possible?
To post the link to this Zoom on the Senate Facebook page?
Yes.
Yes, of course, I can do that.
Okay, cool. Okay, yeah, that works. Well, thank you so much, Holly. Senator Shaw?
Holly, would you mind also recording the meeting through Zoom? Is that possible? Just to
Yeah,
have
no,
the-
it's been recording once the meeting started and I realized I wasn't able to live stream, so we've captured it from the beginning. So that
Okay.
part will be uploaded in its entirety, but I will continue and post the link on the Facebook page for anybody that wants to jump in right now.
Thank you.
Senator Rowe?
Thank you, Holly.
Okay, public forum. Jake? If you got 2 minutes to speak, please enunciate, refrain from yelling, please note this meeting is being recorded. You may speak on any issue that's on the agenda or not. Please include a content warning, could be graphic, mail once, make sure to not answer your questions. It's 2 minutes, enough time.
Could I request 3 additional minutes?
Floor is open. Senator Rowe?
Motion to grant the speaker an additional 3 minutes.
So the motion to grant the speaker additional 3 minutes. Is there a second? Second by Yamiche, round discussion. Call the question, call the question, check the question.
Consent.
Consent, seeing none, motion passes. You may begin.
All right. Great to be back, guys. Hope you all had a great spring break. And yeah, here we are, spring quarter. Just jumping right into it, you guys might remember that we passed a resolution to abolish automatic billing a couple of weeks ago. And there was a recent White House little press release thing here. Let me read it to you guys. The heading is eliminating automatic charges for textbooks. The department is undergoing negotiated rulemaking to reduce costs incurred by students in addition to tuition in higher education by ending the practice of automatic billing on tuition for textbooks. Under the draft proposal, students would now need to authorize a charge on their tuition bill for course materials. Competitive markets provide consumers choice and value, but automatic charges for textbooks and course materials leave students with little ability to meaningfully shop around for better prices or to utilize free and open source textbooks. These changes, if proposed and finalized, would provide students with real choice and the ability to use the best textbooks at the most affordable price. Now, keep in mind, this is not a final decision, but this is a signal and a very good signal. And I'd like, to my knowledge, the Student Perks, which CalPERC is part of, is the largest group working on this kind of policy. And the thing that we gave to the Department of Education, there were 3 resolutions on there nationally, and UCSB was one of them. So I think you guys should all be super proud. I'm super proud, and I think all students here are kind of represented in this as really part of this really big change that's coming. Yeah, so thank you guys, and I'm excited about that. But moving away from textbooks, what have we been doing in the past 3 days? Quarter started, we can't rest. Well, we're doing our recruitment drive, which we do at the start of every quarter. Get those numbers up, right? The more people we have in CalPERC, the more change we can make. And as a part of that, we've educated over 3,400 students through class announcements. Some of you guys may have seen us in your classes. And that's great just for, identifying new people to help do the work. But it's also great because when we talk to our elected officials, we can now give them an absolutely absurd number of students who learned about our campaigns, right? A lot of these issues are so niche, are so under the radar that, nobody heard of them. So the politicians don't vote the way that we'd like them to, not really held accountable. So that is really a huge way to actually further these issues. And then beyond that, we've been running various tables. Yesterday, we ran a petition table to continue to build support for our campaign to ban plastic bags, which is really exciting. And we're going to run more in the rest of the week. This quarter is poised to be the biggest quarter for CalPERC in recent memory. Right now, we're going to be running 4 campaigns. Our campaign to ban plastic bags, our campaign to commit or call on the UC for stronger clean energy goals, which Senator Lang is well acquainted with. Our campaign to help protect California's coastal oceans, and our campaign to increase voter registration and turnout. for the November elections, which I think is very important. And as always, you guys, I encourage you all to reach out to collaborate with me. My email is jaketoomey, DWONEY@ucsb.edu. And I believe that Senators Zah, Littlepage, Wang, and Shalinov all have my text address. So if you guys want to text me, just reach out to them. I'm open to any and all of you. And as always, I'm taking questions.
Floor is open.
Good to see you again, and huge congratulations on getting that response from the White House. I think that's a huge like a huge step in the right direction. Very glad we could work together on that. I wanted to ask you about the class announcements. I haven't seen you in any of my classes, and those are all engineering classes, and I suspect that you're probably focusing more on kind of environmental science, maybe side of things, political science. And I'm curious whether you're bridging out to the departments that probably wouldn't traditionally associate with political activism, because you'd be surprised some of us step up. So that's something that you're interested in.
So usually, our methodology is, first, we just look at the biggest classes, we send out a bunch of emails to those professors, and we do a lot of targeting, so we do go to a couple upper div, you know, maybe social, political science, ES classes. But maybe you haven't seen us in RE classes because you're taking mostly upper divs, and I think a lot of times when people are in their upper divs, they're kind of like figured out what they want to be doing in their college career, so we like to, you know, get those big like Camp 2 classes where it's mostly underclassmen. But yeah, no, we definitely do. I did a class announcement in a upper div like psych and brain class today, which I was glad to do, but you know, those people, they're really like more set in their ways, so it's, you get less you know, feedback on it. But yeah, sorry, that's kind of a long-winded answer.
Floor is open. Thanks, Jake. Anyone else for public forum? Cool, nice quick meeting. Moving down, acceptance of the agenda, floor is open. Senator Shalinov.
I'm sorry, before we accept the agenda, I'd like to add our discussion about funding through HIP and expenditure sent unallocated and a few other reserve accounts. There's 3 projects that are kind of in limbo since last quarter because they weren't able to get funding because we lost quorum toward the end of the meeting. And that discussion, at least part of that discussion, needs to be in closed session. So I'd like to reserve it for the end of the meeting as much as possible, or we can just do it right now in action items, whatever people prefer. I also don't mind it being closed session, but inviting everyone who's in the room, just not entering into the record. That feels fine to me as well. Whatever people want to do. But before we accept the agenda, I want to discuss that. Thank you.
Floor is open. Oh, Senator Rowe, sorry.
Motion to add Senate unallocated spending and HIP funding to discussion items.
There's been a motion to add Senate unallocated spending and HIP funding to discussion items, you said?
Yeah.
Discussion items.
Please have-
Wait, can we do it? I actually. Okay, to action. Good. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Senator Lebowski, when on discussion, objection.
Objection. I have a really quick question.
Yeah.
It's about appointments. What does removal of fluoride mean?
Oh, okay, Senator.
I can speak to that as election board liaison. Caesar's in the room also, I can speak to it later, but one of our board members had a family emergency and had to return home to China. So we had to take the quarter off.
That's the resignation.
The removal was, not responding to correspondence sent by email and not being able to be in contact with.
It's the 3/4 vote of this. There's a process in legal code on BC removals in cases like this. But we'll definitely have the chair discuss it too. Where were we? Oh, we were in discussion for a motion adding these new action items. Okay, we're in discussion. Floor is open. Senator Shaw.
Well, Senator Littlepage made an objection, so until he withdraws it, we need to vote.
Oh, right. I rescind my objection.
Thank you. Floor is open. Question. I call question. Objection. Another question.
Consent.
Objection. Consent. Seeing none. Motion passes. Who seconded?
Oh,
Senator Lebowski.
Thank you.
Senator Lebowski.
I'd like to also add to discussion items, funding for the reflection. So I'd like to motion to add under discussion items, discussion on the creation of a reflection.
The motion to add discussion, two discussion items, discussion on creation of a reflection room.
Objection?
Yeah.
Oh.
No second, motion dies. Senator Rowe?
If you want like funding or an action, can we put it in action items and not discussion items, or did you just want to talk about it?
Yeah, we can do it in action.
Senator Shawna?
Motion to add to action items reflection room.
There's been a motion to add action items for reflection. Is there a second? Second by Senator Carlson, we're on discussion. Objective on question? Consent. Seeing none, motion passes. Okay. We're still Senator Shawna?
Sorry, I didn't hear the consensus on the funding. I just don't want it on the record because it's very difficult to talk about funding while it's on the record, but I don't mind it being everyone in the room. So if we want to just do a closed session, everyone in the room, how do people feel about it?
Yeah, so closed session with everybody in the room, what's perfect.
Senator Carlson?
I think if we like move into topic about like funding things right now, I think it will drag on. I mean, like, you just entertain anybody who's willing to speak, talk about things. Move back to the funding thing. We do that at the end.
You want to do it again?
I just think funding at the end is funny.
It's definitely a big one.
If you want, I think so. I am.
Senator Shawna?
Totally fine with that. On the other hand, I want people to be energetic and for this is the most important. Like that's the decision we're making in this meeting, essentially speaking. And I want people to have their energy before it's dragging through a bunch of bureaucracy. Totally fine, like, I don't care, but do you hear what I'm saying?
How about we hear from elections board and then we go to the funding? Does that work? Senator Rowe?
Do we feel like the old business is gonna drag on that much, because I really do feel like it won't, so it might be fine to do action items after, unless. I don't know though. I don't know if it's controversial. But if we're gonna like speak through it, I think we could be fine.
Senator English?
I have about said, something, I don't think anything else is gonna take that long, so I think we should just talk about it, period.
Senator Rowe?
Motion to accept the agenda with additions?
There's been a motion to accept the agenda with additions. Is there a second? Second by Shawna, for non-discussion.
Call to question.
I call the question, objection, call the question.
Consent.
Consent, objection, consent. Seeing none, motion passes. Okay. Consent calendar is empty. Floor is open. Okay, moving on to action items. Honorary form proposed by AS Finance Team. Senator Zah.
Yes, so Vincent and Michael have contacted me with a slightly added to the existing honorary form. The intention was to make the distribution and the creation of honorary check more easy, which means it can be done faster. I've read the form itself and I've sent it to everyone who is interested in it. Because it's still a work in progress, I've been asked to not share it with anyone outside of AX. So the link is not on the agenda, but it's in your email. If the IVP and the first question at the chair, vice chair of honorary committee wants to weigh in, I yield.
Yeah, I'll let you know, say, I think a Google form just makes so much more sense.
No.
Oh.
Actually, well, now they're not going to be using a Google form. It's just for demonstration. It's still be on our website. Yeah, I think it's because of some information reasons.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay, I think the new form, makes a lot more sense and will be a lot more streamlined. Just faster. Senator Wayne?
While we're on the topic of honorarium, I do want to discuss a little bit about eligibility checks, because that's something that caused digital honorarium to drag on for a little bit too. I was wondering, what do we think about when AS members are appointed into office that they receive an eligibility check as opposed to them getting an eligibility check as they get their honorarium? Because what's the point of someone working for an entire career only to realize that they're not eligible for an honorarium?
Senator Rowe and Senator Zah.
I feel close to that, only because there could be someone who's like not even a student and graduates early and they're receiving honoraria, which doesn't seem right because they're not paying the ASB anymore, so they're not technically even a member of Associated Students, or the student in general. And so that kind of concerns me. I also want to say, I don't think that the reason it dragged on last quarter was just because of eligibility checks, saying that there was some like dysfunction and other processes on our end weren't getting done in a timely manner. And so I don't think that that's the issue at hand, and I feel like it would be making a change that could be kind of risky when it's really the issue. that we're dealing with.
Senator Bell?
After the point Senator Rowe just mentioned about still being a student, as eligibility check also checks for as officers GPA, which needs to be above 2.0, which is a mandatory requirement from the university. So since the GPA for each quarter changes, we kind of have to check it again at the end each quarter. And yeah.
Same with the unit. Yeah, Senator Shaw?
I was gonna say, I agree in kind of abstract theory, but I do think that practically it's just not possible to do it at the beginning. I think what we could, I mean, I would hope to move toward a digitized eligibility check system. I don't think there's any technical barrier to that. I just think that it hasn't happened yet. The fact that manual staff labor is required takes a bunch of time from staff to be used else otherwise. And if it was automatic, it should be automatic and continuous. And when somebody loses honoraria, they get an automated, loses eligibility. Should get an automated email saying that they lost eligibility. And like they should work with their chair to figure it out rather than finding out the quarter. But I don't think that the solution is just moving.
Floor is open. Senator Shaw?
I motion to pass the new honorary form proposed by AI's finance team, while authorizing them make necessary amendments with consultation of the honorary committee if necessary.
There's been a motion to, pass the proposed, the new honoraria form proposed by the ACE finance team. With the addition of any amendments they would make in consultation with the honoraria committee. Is there a second? Second by Carlson, for now discussion, Senator Shaw?
I appreciate the kind of heart of what you're motioning, but I think it is pretty strange. Legal language doesn't provide any bound to that change, so they could just, I think what we should do is motion to empower the honoraria committee to change the honoraria form. And then the honoraria committee will figure out the implementation details on the other end.
Senator Zell?
Yes, I totally agree, and amend my previous motion of empower the honorary committee to review and pass the new honorary form proposed by AI's finance team
Within 4 weeks.
within 4 weeks.
There's a motion to amend the previous motion to state, motion to empower the honorary committee to review and pass the new honorary form proposed by the AIS finance team. Within 4 weeks. Is there a second? Second by Shauna for non-discussion. I have a question, objection, no question.
Concern.
Objection to consent. Seeing none, motion passes. Okay, next we have. Next, we have the extension of elections board deadline for preliminary financial statements. There's 2 elections board deadline extensions that are necessary. Caesar, do you want to talk about these?
Yeah, do you want, can I do my report at this time and then we can go through everything that I have?
Yeah, is everyone cool with that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, come on up.
We go back into parliamentarian noise and then we'll have a motion to go into the report that.
And suspend orders of the day.
Yeah, something like that.
Feel free.
All right, hello, everyone. Good to be on this side of the podium. I should have kept my mouth shut and just been parliamentarian, could have collected $300 for nothing. No, I'm having much fun doing this. So I have quite a bit of things to give to you as reports. If you're a candidate, you know I'm in the habit of sending lengthy emails. That's not going to change with verbal reports. First thing, we had declaration of candidacy on Monday, right in here actually. We had 53 attendees and 10 no-shows, so good attendance overall. We had photos taken by Simone, the creative media unit photographer. So I think most candidates had their photograph taken for the ballot. We also have Woodstock's Pizza, thanks to Marty Setup for getting that ordered on short notice. So most of the meeting took up candidates introducing themselves, just talked about what position they were running for. Last year, the elections board had the fun fact question be Pineapple on Pizza, this year's favorite film. A lot of film buffs in this candidate pool, which is kind of cool. Stemming from that, and you guys were about to consider it before I was called up, were 2 deadline extensions. So in the aftermath of that meeting, I talked about the candidate statement being due today at 4 p.m. I have since then had candidates email the elections board asking via email that their statements be put on the ballot or on the supplement, I should say. So I'm requesting that the deadline be extended, and I'll get into why you guys are doing it instead of the elections board later on in the report. And then also preliminary financial statements is the other thing. I think that one has much greater participation. There's only 5 people who haven't submitted. So that's much better. But in terms of candidate statements, we're missing like 15 or so. So I want to make sure that people have the opportunity to do that. The deadlines that exist in legal code, I'm just operating off of what was there last year. To be honest, they're quite arbitrary, so we can extend them at will if we need to. That's what I'm requesting. Moving on from DOC, a bit of a membership update that I know that also came in, that also came up as an objection and approval of the agenda. So I wanted to give some clarification there. And Senator Adler spoke to that a little bit. So we have 2 departures. One of our members unfortunately had to return to China for a family emergency. We wish him the best, and he was a great board member during the time that he was with us. The other person unfortunately just hasn't responded to any emails that I've sent. Hasn't activated the AS email, hasn't responded to any emails through their personal UCSB account. So we're requesting his dismissal. To replace those 2 departures, we have 2 new appointments. So in finals week, I conducted interviews with 3 candidates. I'm recommending 2 of them for appointment to you all. That will get us up to 3 general members and myself. We're still waiting on a vice chair appointment. That's handled separately through the committee of committees. Committee of committees will then recommend to the president an appointment. I have no purview over that. Last I heard, they had interviewed somebody, haven't received anything else from since then. So that's an action item for you to consider as well in appointments. Within the DOC meeting, towards the end, candidates will remember, I held a bit of a straw poll to figure out whether y'all wanted to do candidate forums in person or through video, as has been done in past years. Pre-COVID, we used to do candidate forums in the hub, and overwhelmingly, this is what people wanted to return to the in-person format. We're specifically going to do it in the evening over a couple of days. We're obviously not going to do it on Wednesdays because of Senate. So we're looking at probably Thursday, Friday. One candidate did reach out and say there's UC Hill Day in Washington, DC that week. So I'm waiting to hear back from him on when that's going on, because I know that it seems like there's a significant amount of candidates who are attending that. I want to make sure that people have the opportunity to participate in candidate forums. If we have to switch to Saturday 420, then, you know, so be it. I prefer to do it Thursday, Friday. That way everybody can enjoy their weekend. So yeah, I welcome your thoughts on that once I'm done doing my report. The next item is fee initiative. So I've been in talks with Senator Jacques, who came to our first board meeting to discuss the Global Gaucho Commission and Commission on Disability Equity fee initiatives that are on the ballot this year. I think Marissa has been in contact with UCOP to determine what exactly the final ballot language should be. They've been wondering how much those organizations are requesting exactly. I think Mingjun and I understood that the organizations are requesting 99 cents per quarter gross. So any things like return to aid, administrative recharge will be taken from that 99 cents per quarter per student. So I think, I don't know how the math works out, and it varies based on what the organization type is. But it should be around 66 cents a quarter per student. And then I think, was it 33 in the summer, something like that? That may require Senate action. I don't remember the exact text of what was passed in that one Zoom meeting. I think it was done via Zoom. those two items, plus the Grammarly one, that, I think that one's okay. Marissa can double check me on that. What's next? Oh, yeah, so the Elections Commission at UC Merced reached out to all of the elections commissions of the UC campuses. So we're kind of getting like an informal elections coalition going between all the elections chairs to discuss how elections are run at our respective UC campuses. That's an exciting initiative. So I met with UC Merced to discuss their voter turnout. As you may know, they're a small campus. They were only founded in 2005, and I think they have the smallest enrollment of all the UCs. So they're trying to learn from the more established UCs on what to do to get their elections, get their elections to a higher turnout. I think we'll kind of initiate more robust conversations as we get past each UC's election season. And I think they had separate talks with UCLA during spring break that I wasn't able to attend. The last item that I have to discuss is the ongoing recall petition. I'm sure you all are aware of it by now. Today, Elections Board, myself specifically directed AS staff to begin verifying signatures on that petition. The threshold is 327. The amount of voters, it's 10% of the amount of voters in office for the last general election. So 3,270 voted in the last election for president. So I want to clarify a little bit about what that means. As you know, I think I mentioned this in my last report, but the ballot comes to you all for approval next Wednesday. Normally the statutory deadline for the petition to reach signatures is April 14th, but that's beyond next Wednesday. That's why we're doing signature verification now, in case it reaches the count before that, that April 14th deadline, it can come to the Senate for a vote. In particular, the two votes that you all have to take, if it's presented next week, first is to ratify the petition. So that just includes, declaring whether or not it's valid. Depending on the results of verification and what the staff reports to me, I'll give you a recommendation on whether or not to ratify it. The second item is whether or not to hold a special election, or whether or not to hold a recall election for the office of president. So if you vote yes to ratify, it then goes to an election vote. You all get to determine whether or not an election is held to recall the president. If you vote yes, and I think that requires a 2/3 vote, if I'm not mistaken. If you vote yes, it comes back to Elections Board and we determine the format of it. If you vote no, no further action is taken. And the same is with ratification. If you choose not to ratify it, no further action is taken. There's not even a vote on whether or not to hold a special election. What else? Yeah, and I also have candidate counts for each office if you guys want to know that, but that's kind of just numbers. Yeah, does anybody have any questions? Was the threshold to reach a ratification of the petition? It's also good.
I'd have to go back to legal code and check. It may either be a simple majority or 2/3. It's one of those two. I don't think it's 3/4.
Are you at liberty to share a preliminary signature count prior to verification or?
No, I have to wait until the staff gives me a formal report on that number.
When do you expect that?
The direction was given earlier today to commence signature verification. So I have to wait for them to complete that process and then I'll have a report. If the report comes back with enough signatures, then I'll notify the Senate. And then it's up to you all to determine when you're going to put that on the agenda. The thing to note is that the ballot has to be approved by next Wednesday. So it's very likely that if the petition does have enough valid signatures, then you're going to have to determine the language of, or whether or not to hold a recall if it gets that far, as well as sorting out the fee initiative language in conversation with Mingjin, and then the rest of the ballot. So we're in a very tight timeline right here.
So if it isn't ratified, well, not by the Senate, if it isn't checked by staff before next Wednesday, and let's say it finishes on the Friday, we don't even do anything?
That's where it kind of
is out of elections board hands. If you all would like to extend the deadline for the ballot to be approved, that's another thing. I would have to look back at our dates to see the ramifications of that. That's kind of where it's out of my hands, though. That's kind of where you all as Senate have to decide, do we want to wait another week for the ballot to come back? Do we want to hold a special meeting? Those are all options. Or do we want to do nothing? That's also an option.
Understood, thank you.
Senator Lebowski, you can talk.
For the recall election, is it still actually permissible when we only have like 6 weeks until the next president comes in?
Yes. Yeah, so the special, the code, it's section 18 of the bylaws, it's the last, or article 18 of the bylaws, it's the last section, I think it's section 16 that discusses that. Or actually it might be the constitution, it's in there somewhere in elections code. But if the special election is to happen in spring quarter, before the 4th week of the quarter, it can either be scheduled ASAP, so we can run one separate from the spring general, or we can combine it with the spring general. When I said, I think that was previously done, right?
Yes.
So there's precedent for it, where a recall is run concurrently with the spring general. And I can't foresee a future in which we would run one. I mean, if it were to come back to us as us having to run an election, I certainly wouldn't want to run one a week before running the spring general, because it's a lot of publicity. But that's for us to decide. I couldn't make a decision without having something in front of me from the Senate.
Senator Zoll.
I have 2 questions, so if I could go back and forth.
Feel free.
Thank you. So my first question is about the login phase. Since we do not have the clear language at the moment, and we need to have it ready by next Wednesday, do you think it will be right to authorize to the election board to change the language and necessary amount with, and I'm happy to talk with you if you want to make some additional confirmations.
Yeah, so my opinion on that is, we should continue conversation with UCOP over how to get the ballot language to where they're comfortable with it. The Senate, because it's like a routine thing, the Senate's already discussed it at length in terms of do we like this fee initiative or not? It can be as simple as an email vote. Once we have language that that is satisfactory to UCOP, we can put it in an email vote, or the IVP can put it in an email vote. We deal with it from there. But again, that's Senate leadership's prerogative. Delegating to elections board, I'm not in favor of that. We've got a lot of stuff on our plate. If it's something the Senate wants to give to us and I don't think there's really a precedent for it. But that's not for me to decide. I can give you my opinion on doing the email vote once we have good language. That would be my course of action. I think it's fair to share that.
Yeah, that's smart. And my second question is that, do you share a little bit more about the reasons some candidates required an extension for the statements? Because to me, the deadline for candidate statement is literally on the election portal. And I just want to know why it needs more time.
Yeah, so that was kind of mine and Christina's decision, and Christina, the other elections board member, that was our decision on extending them. Because like I said, I mean, there's no like technical requirement, you know, there's no, at least as far as I can tell, there's no specific reason why one particular date is specified. So we can extend it as far as we want. And I think the bigger thing is if we were to maintain this current cutoff, by my estimate, there's about 15 to 17 candidates who haven't submitted a statement, and that's a sizable amount where the supplement is just blank. I think it's in the best interest for the student body to know what each candidate stands for. I also don't think it's unfair to the people who've already submitted election statements. If anything, the people who haven't submitted would be charged with an infraction and the ones that closer to being disqualified. I certainly don't like to issue infractions. So that's my rationale for wishing to extend both these dates. I want to give the candidates the greatest opportunity to submit documentation and submit statements that will be going forward into the public. You know, within reason, right? So I sent out an informational email to all candidates, hopefully the candidates received it, stating that these two deadline extensions are under consideration by the Senate tonight. I didn't promise them one way or another, but, you know, if it's approved, then I'm sure the candidates would appreciate it, but again, your prerogative. A lot of stuff is your prerogative.
Senator Rowe?
I had a question about the recall petition, actually. This is a question I've had for kind of a while. The language, section 4, recall elections, and our legal code says, except executive officers, which will be a number equal to 10% of the total membership of its members who voted for the said office in the immediately preceding associated students general election. I was wondering if the interpretation is that that's just 10% of the number, so like 327 or whatever it might be, or is it 327 of the 3,200 students who voted for that office specifically, like students who voted for that?
For that office.
Exactly,
specifically.
yeah.
Yeah, so the count, for some reason, is different for each office of the executive. I don't know if people like wrote people in, or if they had like a spoiled ballot, to the extent you can have a spoiled ballot electronically. But the counts are different for each office, and so I think that's the interpretation that I've gone by, is that it's 10% of the voters for that office in the immediately preceding general election.
Senator Rowe?
So just the number of students?
The number of people who cast votes, yeah, 10% of that.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Floor is open. Okay, oh, yes, Sean?
Yeah, sorry. By whom was this decision? Like the legal code is extremely ambiguous. It says of the total membership, comma, of its members who voted, which is two contradictory statements. Was this adjudicated by judicial council, or has this just been interpreted one way?
So, okay, then I
This
will
has been interpreted one
tomorrow
way.
afternoon and then, yeah, we're good. So I'll then,
I'll need to mute Lisa, please.
Thanks, Holly. Floor is open.
Speak your truth. Even I'm sure.
Senator Carlson?
I'm a little bit like in the head with the, I'm not sure how it's contradictory. What is the, basically like assuming Mike and I voted in for president, would we have to sign the petition for it to be valid? Or is it like, let's say Nayeli and Michaela didn't vote for president, they had a spoiled ballot, but their names were on the petition. Are those valid signatures?
That's a good question. I don't know that it's been adjudicated by judicial council before. As Senator Shalanoff mentioned, the legal code is extremely vague on some issues, and so I completely agree that it can be interpreted one way or another. That's simply the way that I have interpreted it. That I think previous recall elections have interpreted it the same way. I've just been kind of going off of that. Yeah.
Senator Rowe, Little Pigeons up.
I think this is definitely a good time to maybe reevaluate some of that language in general. So if you're interested in like changing it and making it more clear, that might be helpful in the future. Dr. Marquez, could I invite you? Do you have any insight on that? If it's supposed to be like a number of students who actually voted for that office, or is it just like what's happened in the past?
It follows convention from national and local and state elections, meaning that all of us are transitory, move and vote in potentially different places. So the standard is usually the number of folks that turn out, and then recalls are phased out.
If I could add to that, I mean, just to give an example, right, say, you know, let's say 80% of the voters, or let's say, for the sake of argument, 95% of the voters for president were graduating seniors, right, and no longer here. You can't reach the threshold with the votership that remains, so that's what I think Dr. Marquez meant by transitory.
Senator Littlepage?
Yeah, and also there's no way to like confirm who voted in the last election unless there's like databases of like every student who's voted in each election. So I was assuming it's just by numbers. And I think by members, it's just referring to students who are members of the association by default.
Senator Sullivan?
I personally agree with the interpretation of the election ballots. I think that's the most rational and workable explanation of that legal code. Yeah.
Senator Shalanoff?
Yeah, I think that there's a a couple of questions, most of which we'll need to determine after we've received a response as to whether, like, this might be a moot issue. There might just not be enough signatures that are valid. So I do want to leave the bulk of the discussion to after the point in which we have that information. That being said, I'd like to ask that if after the election, throughout the rest of the spring quarter, you have time to review this language and maybe propose alternate language, that would be really great.
Yeah.
And in general, amendments to the election process from the lessons that you'll learn throughout the election would be great to have those proposals when we're in the lame duck period of this time.
Yeah, don't worry. So, the previous chair, Owen Skinner, left behind a draft of a bunch of legal code changes that he wanted, one of which has been since incorporated as the Candidate Endorsements Act, so that's one. There have been like a lot of other legal code changes that have been proposed by the past elections board. One particular thing to note is that no parties registered this year. And I think this is now the second year that no parties have been registered. So there will certainly be several conversations, probably in the form of an elections town hall, where we have open-ended discussions about the future of the elections at UCSB. Part of that may be removing parties entirely. It's really up to the Senate to decide. I know, I think it was a communication from the president at UC Berkeley, which said that parties are an essential organizing tool. I mean, if that's the case, at least on our campus, then why aren't they being used? I think there was ample time for parties to form and nobody did. Or, is this indicative of a new direction of elections here? I can't say. But it's worth having the conversation around at the very least. And so, yeah, I will be doing a comprehensive elections code review with the new board members. And there will be open forums for people to discuss these in the future.
Floor is open. There we go.
Wait, you said no parties have registered. Don't we not allow parties?
We do allow parties.
Oh.
So we have, parties are permitted for just the president and both external vice presidents. Internal vice president, SAG, and all senators are required to be independent.
Floor is open.
And the removal of parties would massively clean up legal code as well, because there's often separate like financial reporting requirements for parties and for independent candidates, the same with like disciplinary action. So I mean, if y'all want to pass that in the lame duck period, I would be very happy. But again, your prerogative.
How many candidates per office? Could you give us numbers? I'm curious.
So six candidates for president, 2 for internal vice president. Sorry, and I preface this with the fact that some people no-showed. The typical action for no-show is disqualification. And that's the action I'm going to be recommending at the next elections board meeting. Just because the date for DOC has been known for a long time. It's been public and at least, to the candidates and their candidate portal and through emails. So I, like I said, I don't like being punitive in any sense, but at a certain point, it's just required.
Is this included
I'll give you the numbers when I get there. So 6 candidates for president, 2 candidates for internal vice president, 2 candidates for external vice president of local affairs, 1 candidate for external vice president of statewide affairs, 4 candidates for student advocate general, 2 of which no-showed, 22 candidates for off-campus senator, 5 of which no-showed, 2 candidates for on-campus, 3 candidates for university-owned off-campus, 9 candidates for letters and science senator, 1 university-owned no-showed, 2 candidates from LNS no-showed, 2 candidates for College of Engineering, 1 candidate for creative studies, 4 candidates for transfer, and 4 candidates for international. So I think all of the offices except for EDPSA and on campus and creative studies are contested. So, I mean, this is a massive turnout compared to last year. I'm extremely happy with this. Given the short time that we've had to operate, I'm more than pleased.
Floor's open. If there's no more questions, is there anything else you wanna?
No, that's it. Yeah, you guys have the elections email to send any questions to, if you have anything in the interim. Thank you.
Thank you, Caesar. Where were we? Should we go back to action items? We should. Okay, we have 2 elections board deadline interventions on the agenda. Floor is open. Senator's up.
I motion to vote on the extension of the election ballot deadline for preliminary financial statement Friday, April 5th, 2024 at 4 p.m. by hand vote.
There's been a motion to vote on the extension of the elections board deadline for preliminary financial statements to Friday, April 5th, 2024 at 4 p.m. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Rowe, we're now discussion. Senator Shanoff and then Senator Paulson.
I'd like to just ask, I mean, as a polite thing, if people who are running would abstain from votes that directly pertain to you, that would be great.
100%. My question is, why is it 4 p.m.?
Which is when they are.
That's right, it's arbitrary. It's an arbitrarily
reason,
midnight.
Was there a reason the extensions are till 4 p.m.?
Sorry.
Is it like right before your meeting?
Going on? It's my bad.
All your deadline extensions are till 4 p.m. Is there a
Yes.
reason 4 p.m.?
4 p.m. is just, again, longstanding precedent
Yeah.
that stuff is due at 4 p.m. That time is synonymous with when board placements come out. So the elections board will announce, each candidate gets 2 boards. It's actually conflicting with legal code because each candidate is only allowed 1 board. But we're gonna allow to not charge anybody with infractions. Just because that's precedent from last year. Everybody's been issued 2 boards. I mean, all of you ran last year. I think if you put up boards, did you put up 2?
One.
One, 0,
I
1.
got 2, I got
You
2
put up 2?
spaces, but I
One.
was told, I didn't pull one out, but
Yeah.
I was the only.
And I think it also may be you have the option of 2 places, so you can put them in one of 2. And now that you bring that to my attention, that I think that might be what we go with. I did say 2 at DOC though, so I might have shot myself in the foot.
Are there enough spaces for 50 candidates and?
Yes.
That's a good question. I'm gonna find out and get back to you. There's enough space for each candidate to at least have 1.
Okay.
So I think the interpretation is right, that you get 2 spots and you pick 1. I think I think we're gonna run with that.
Last year's.
Let that serve as the official announcement. Tell your friends. Alright, is that it?
Yes, yeah, you're good. Thank you. Floor is open. Oh, wait, we're in discussion on the motion.
Call the question.
I call the question, question, call the question.
Consent.
Consent. Okay, so.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, real quick.
So are people not voting gonna be abstentions, or are they just not gonna vote?
Okay, I would.
If abstention is not.
Yeah.
Vote abstention and you just not count it towards threshold.
I'm supposed to follow the same precedent I have met.
It's just a majority. It's just a simple majority.
Yeah, let's kind of sacrifice. Okay, could you not raise your hand if you're running, but raise your hand if you will not be voting in the next vote?
Cause you can't. count.
Okay, we would lose quorum too.
How about?
Can I just-
Could I call the parliamentarian?
Alright, I've risen from the dead to come back to parliamentarian. If you want my opinion is that it's fine for people who are participating in the election, to vote on this. This is also way out of order, and if I was on that side of the table, I'd be shutting you down for
Oh,
letting you
sure.
talk, but I'm on this side now.
I got it.
Yeah.
We're allowed to interpret rules of order.
You can also, what you could do is take, the voting membership, or the people who are actually casting votes, yes or no votes as the total membership, exclude those abstentions. I think that's opposite of what you've previously done, if I remember correctly. So, but hey,
And still have this one.
I'm gonna let you guys figure that out.
Okay, no, okay, I got this sorted. I want to hear your opinion on this though. We're according to like the upgraded thing we did last year, promises of order, we interpret it however we want, and if we just made a motion that says just for these 2 votes, we can interpret it this way. And that way being sections do not count towards vote total.
Yeah.
We're chilling.
Yeah, write it
Okay,
down.
okay, is that, it's another page?
What if we just did it by voice vote? Does that,
That also, that would probably help.
Oh, that's not bad. Yeah, that's a good idea. Wait,
or you just say like yes or no?
and then whichever one's louder.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, motion withdrawn. Senator's up. Still in order.
But I motion to interpret abstention not towards the threshold of passing vote on two of the extension requests from the election board.
There's been a motion to interpret abstentions as not counting towards the vote, the threshold requirement for the duration of this meeting.
No, that's it.
Oh, okay, for the two elections board deadline extension requests for the duration of this meeting. Is there a second? Second by Senator Lepowski. Thank you. Marcel?
I would just invite the chair to invite the motion to say why.
Oh, that's a good idea. Senator Zahn.
As a candidate for the election myself, I do not want to cast my vote since it's about election regulation. But if we count the abstention not towards so if we count abstention as objection as the previously done, then we'll lose quorum. And it will not be great. So that's the reason for this motion.
Well played. We're still in discussion on the motion. Floor is open. Senator Carlson?
Oh. Second.
No, we're in discussion.
Oh.
Senator Rowe?
Can you say it? I wrote it. I wrote like a little to amend the actual motion language, so it's not on you now.
Just rescind your motion.
Yeah, it's in the first motion.
Senator Schultz?
Motion to interpret abstentions is not counting toward the total vote count for the following two elections for deadline requests for the duration of this meeting to not further conflict of interest by allowing candidates in the upcoming election.
There's been a motion to interpret abstentions as not counting towards. As not counting towards the threshold requirement for two election board deadline extension requests for the duration of this meeting. To not pose a conflict of interest by allowing candidates in the upcoming election vote. Is there a second? Second, Bill Trusky, we're not discussing.
Call the question.
I call the question, Jeffrey, call the question.
Consent.
Second, objection, consent. Seeing none, motion passes. Okay, we did do all of that in the middle of the vote. Whatever. Okay, so it's gonna be raise your hand for yeses, then raise your hand for nos, and then raise your hand for.
This motion was withdrawn.
Oh, did you withdraw the?
Yeah, I withdraw.
It was withdrawn.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, thank you. Never mind. Senator Shaw?
A motion to vote via hand vote on the extension of the elections board deadline preliminary financial statements to Friday, April 5th, 2024 at 4 p.m.
There's been a motion to vote by hand vote on the extension of the election board deadline preliminary financial statements to Friday, April 5th, 2024 at 4 p.m. Is there a second?
Second row.
Second by Rowe, we're in discussion. Question, question. Consent. Seeing none, motion passes. Okay, hands for yes. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 yeses. Hands for no. I have 0 no's. Abstentions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 abstentions. Okay, motion passes. We're voting. Senator Rowe?
Motion to vote on the extension of the elections board deadline for candidate statements to Friday, April 5th, 2024 at 4 p.m.
Second.
Motion to vote on the extension of the elections board deadline for, what was it, candidate statements? For candidate statements to Friday, April 5th, 2024 at 4 p.m. Second by Little Page. We're not discussion. I call the question, directly call the question. Consent. I object. Wait, did I have an objection? No? Okay, no, hearing no objection, motion passes. Okay, same thing. Yeses? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, no's? 1. 1 no, okay. And then abstentions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, motion passes. Was it
Wait,
7?
wait a minute.
It was me. Reading this bill.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so 8 to 1? Cool, okay, moving on. The extension passes. Okay, so now we have to send an allocated funding and the reflection of that public information. Okay, oh, yeah. Senator Shaw?
Or did you want to just move on?
Saying to come back.
Okay.
Okay.
Old business? Yeah, I don't care either way. Okay, let's go to old business. A resolution to establish temporary Black Empowerment Senate Committee. Floor is open.
Well, We amended some of the things that Nugent had brought up, last time we met, and then, I guess the other major change would be that we changed it back to resolution. It has a fiscal impact, and then I think, like, the main thing in the resolution was the task force, being subject to reaffirmation by the 75th and 76th Senate. So, yeah, I yield.
Thank you, Senator. Floor is open. Senator Zhao.
I want to thank the authors for taking the opportunity to work with me and address some of the technicality questions. I'm very happy with the resolution as it stands, and I see no reason to not pass it. Thank you.
What was up, Senator Wayne?
And I just want to shed a little bit more light, or just make it some more context in general. The reason why it was a bill in the first place is because we wanted to make it for, I guess, around 2 years, because that way there's like less of that turnover, because like a lot of temporary Senate committees, they come and go. We want this committee to be something that would be more permanent. That's why there is a clause that says for reaffirmation or some subject to reaffirmation by the 75th and 76th Senate. That would be up to the interpretation of the future Senate, but that's like the intention of us as authors. And me and Senator Bodway are both second years right now, so we would be looking to, I guess, reestablish this for next year as well.
Floor is open. Senator Zhao.
I really appreciate the resolution coming, and I appreciate the changes were made, because those are some issues. I don't understand which one we're voting on, because there's 2 entries of this on the agenda.
I believe they're both the same. I don't know why there's 2 of them. Yeah,
That's my mistake.
so,
Just leave it. Yeah,
yeah, either one of
just
them.
leave the second one. Yeah, good catch. Floor is open. Senator Yamaguchi.
Motion to pass a resolution to establish a temporary Black Empowerment Senate Committee.
There's been a motion to pass a resolution to establish a temporary Black Empowerment Senate Committee. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Littlepage for now discussion.
Question.
Already called the question, Jackson called the question.
Consent.
Already consent, objection to consent. Seeing none, motion passes. Okay, next we have a bill to specify executive orders as explicit power to ASCCSB president. What's up, Senator Shaw? Oh, Senator Wayne.
Thanks for that. But hello, everyone. We're back with this bill again. Just to give you a little bit more context about this bill, we did talk a little bit about this at the end of last meeting, but the goal of this meeting, or the goal of this bill is just to certify within legal code what an executive order is, define it, because right now, as it stands, executive orders aren't defined. And there have been conversations where there should be constraints on the power of the executive order, whether that be through Senate, whether that be through Judicial Council. But let me clarify for every single member in this room, right now, executive orders have no constraints, and they don't have constraints for a reason. The reason why they don't have constraints is because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This system of executive orders, as being an implicit power of the office of the president, has worked so far because it's simply never been abused. And if we were to change that now, when there's clearly nothing that has been wrong with it, that would be almost as if implying that it'd be because our president, well, a specific president that we have now, has done something which with executive orders for us to change it, which President Vexler has done. Now, another point I want to bring up is that I personally, this is my view on the way Senate functions. Senate is not designed to be a power that I guess checks the power of the president in this specific instance, because executive orders have only been issued in times of crisis. And that means that executive orders in the past have been able to suspend bylaws. And if this would be, we as the Senate should allow the president to do their job as the executive of the association. So being able to check that power wouldn't be correct. And I don't think it has ever been done. It's not done in the US Constitution. It's not done in the US government. And I don't think it should be done in AS.
Senator Shaw.
Yeah, I want to bring everyone's attention to first of all, I agree with everything Alan just said. Second, I wanted to bring everyone's attention to the fact that there's 2 copies of this legislation on the agenda. If you pull them both up, you can see that the key difference is that they've added a section, like it's called 6 in the new one, relating to the removal of elected officers. I vehemently disagree with this change. I think it breaks the legislation. I think that adding this language implies that the president has the power to remove an elected official by executive order, which necessarily must be ambiguous, right? Otherwise, we're not, if we want to create a system by which elected officials can be removed, let's create a system by which a elected official can be removed. Instead of doing that, this just adds a breadcrumb of legitimacy to this practice without actually specifying the process, right? If the liaison committee amendment version of this legislation were to be passed, it would now be unambiguously clear via the bylaws of the association that the president has the power to remove an elected official by executive order with the stipulation that it wasn't rescinded within 14 days by the Senate. And that, first of all, fundamentally breaks this piece of legislation. It was supposed to not involve the Senate in the executive order process. Second, I don't know if Alvin was, but I wasn't consulted on that change. And third, I think that it creates a really uncomfortable position, both for the president and for the executive order structure. It needs to be ambiguous. There's a reason that it's not an exhaustive list of the things that the executive order can do, because the whole point is that the executive order pushes those boundaries. And if that thing is illegal, then it goes to judicial council and judicial council makes that review. And as Senator Wayne correctly pointed out, it's not the Senate's job to check the executive function in this regard. It's a judicial council's job. And that is implied in the existence of legislation. Adding this section 6 breaks that and creates a system that allows the president to remove elected officials with an executive order, which I don't think is what any of us want to vote on right now. So I just wanted to point that out, that there's two different versions of this legislation and they are dramatically different. And I highly recommend that you vote yes on the first and highly recommend you vote no on the second.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Zahn.
So most of this amendment proposed by the agent committee was sent to both of the authors' email. Well, as we can see right here, but we'll do better in the future. The reason we came up with those amendments is very simple, because the executive order have been used in the past to remove an elected officer. And it just happens. I don't think we should put our head into the sand and pretend it never happened. Both of the authors are my very dear friends, but I just fundamentally disagree with them on this part. If executive order had been successfully used to remove elected officials, then I believe it will be prudent for us to recognize that and to say that it may occur again in the future instance, and have some institutionalized firewall or stop on that. So just which will not be exploited. I don't think any of the candidates for president of the next year will exploit the executive order, but it will be here for 10 years, 20 years, or even 50 more years. I think we should. So just as a famous guy said, when design an institution, you should imagine all those being elected by evil. That's the way we design a good institution.
Alvin Carlson.
Yeah, I'm glad that Senator Chalmers deleted that. I read the clause 6 and I was very confused because I might disagree with Senator Jaw's line of reasoning, because I don't think it's prudent for this body to give that power to the executive in any fashion. And if it is an issue like the B. Schaefer situation, we need to empower ourselves to resolve our own internal functions and restore processes internally, and not resign on an unchecked executive to come give them power to make any, removals whenever they see fit. It's like in any checks and balance system, relying on precedent as opposed to like clear boundaries of power is not a good look, right? Like we don't want, it's like if we gave, to make an extreme example, like gave the president like, I don't know, a machine gun and like put it on the table for them and like hope you don't use it, right? Like that would make not a lot of sense, right? So I think it's really important when we're talking about outlining the function of the executive, we make it super clear so the power can't be abused. Because as you say, and what Alvin said, people haven't done it yet, but our job
is to foresee every possible future situation where that could be used. So making super clear the distinctions that govern a legal executive order versus not, I think that completely needs to be stricken entirely. The removal of elected officials should be nowhere near the bounds of acceptable executive. Right.
I'm gonna spread over you, let one of the others. Oh,
Yeah.
would you? Okay, Senator Carlson.
If one of the authors, please respond, just so it's fair.
Okay, yeah. I want to reframe the conversation because I do agree that there absolutely should be, this question should be adjudicated. That being said, it doesn't need to be adjudicated in the vote on this piece of legislation, which I think was fine. And I think that maybe we should add a clause like this, maybe we shouldn't. I totally agree with your framing of the situation. I even agree with the idea that like the institution should be designed in such a way that the worst possible actor wouldn't be able to break it. That being said, on the pertinent issue here, if you do want to design a removal system, given, I agree, there is the precedent and we can't just, I do agree that we can't just bury our heads in the sand, the precedent exists. So we need to take a positive step in one direction or another in terms of what we deal with that, how we deal with that is. But if we were to design a system in which a president could remove an elected official by executive order, I don't think it should be as easy as the president and half the Senate. I think it should be a much higher bar. I think it should be the president, maybe most of the other executives, maybe a 3/4 majority of the Senate, right? So the structure that you've created here, I don't think is nearly tight enough. And I think let's figure out what structure we want, but in the meantime, let's pass the uncontroversial portions of the legislation. That's what I'm advocating for.
And I just want to bring up that even if clause 6 were in legal code, it wouldn't have resolved the issue of last year. If you remember, or not last year, I guess last Senate, the 73rd Senate, because if you remember, what happened in the 73rd Senate is there was no chair for Senate meetings. That means Senate couldn't meet. The Senate doesn't have quorum and Senate can't convene, then it can't make a decision on whether or not to approve or disapprove of a removal of an elected officer. So this added clause would honestly have helped in last year's situation. Also, I do think that we're missing a little bit of the point of what the purpose of an executive order is. The executive order is never a first option. There's always 3-4 options that we explore until we really have no other options left. That's last year, our association was in a realm of crisis, which is why executive orders were necessary. There can never be any point that executive order is the first option. They're an option for situations of crisis. That I think that sort of freedom that we empower the president to make these executive orders, that freedom is necessary to account for all the situations that we can't foresee. Now, if we really tried to design a bulletproof system on what an executive order can and can't do, we'd be here for like, not even hours, we'd be here for like years. Let's be real, we'd be here for years. But the goal of an executive order isn't to design it to be bulletproof because it's the purview of an executive officer, the executive officer of the association, the chief executive officer of the association to make these actions in time of crisis.
Senator Carlson?
One thing I like the arguments I heard about whether or not an executive order pertaining to the removal of an elected official should be included or not. That's fair. I think it's probably best to kind of leave that behind low key, only because it's like, that's just one section of what any executive order can do. And I think I would feel a lot more comfortable with, I'm not a poli-sci or anything, Congressman. It clearly says on Wikipedia, Congress has the power to overturn an executive order by passing legislation that invalidates it, and can also refuse to provide funding necessary to carry out certain policy measures contained with the order or legitimized policy mechanisms. And in the case of the former, that is to overturn an executive order, the president retains the power to veto that decision. However, Congress may override that veto with 2/3 majority. So if we wanted to do it by how US Congress does it, then why don't you just put that in it instead of number 6, if an executive order pertains to the removal of an elected official? Or is the entire goal here just to say executive orders are real and not a figment of the Associated Students' imagination, and therefore we will give the president unbridled power?
Just to respond to that point, our Associated Students at UCSB is not, it's well under the US government, but has many glaring differences. For example, the way it works in the US government is if there is an unconstitutional executive order, the Supreme Court is empowered to call it unconstitutional and I guess like pretty much delegitimize it. But there is no mention of executive order whatsoever in our constitution, which is, I guess, once again, fundamentally different than the US Constitution. So we have explored giving Judicial Council of AS the power to overturn executive orders as we see in the US government, but for many reasons that wouldn't work because that's not the purpose of our Judicial Council. And it's not within the wishes of Judicial Council, the chair of Judicial Council.
Senator Abbott?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, I mean, I'm trying to agree with Senator Carlson's perspective, and to go to Senator Wang's point about executive orders being used in time of crisis, this definition, an immediate directive to a specific associated students, entity, officer, or organization as a whole to execute or refrain from particular action, makes no mention of any extenuating circumstances, and furthermore, seems like a license to make any order about anything to any organization whatsoever. So like, I agree with you if we want to get into the nitty gritty about the ironing out specific definition, it would take a while, but I can't delineate the difference between this and the president being empowered to do anything. If the president made an executive order say, hey, Senate can't meet in the flying A room anymore. Is that legal by this definition? Like, yes, but it appears so, right? So like, I think there's still some work to do to not give unlimited power to the executive, but yeah.
Shall I help them, Carlson? Please.
Thank you, everyone. I think it's a good discussion. I wanted to rein things in a little bit. So first of all, under section 2 of our constitution, the president shall, point 12, be empowered to issue reasonable and lawful executive orders when the parameters set by the bylaws of the Associated Students of UCSB. I think we wrote that, if I remember correctly. So currently the standard in a vacuum is reasonable and lawful within the parameters set by the bylaws. These are the proposed parameters that we want to set within the bylaws that specify a narrowing, right? This is a step toward narrowing the definition, right? We've added clauses about how they have to be distributed, that they can edit previous orders, right? We've added these clauses as a narrowing of that power, but the power at the present is fully expanded within the realm of whatever is determined to be reasonable and lawful within the context of the Judicial Council. All of those checks and balances that Senator Carlson listed do implicitly exist within our system, roughly speaking, in the sense that if an executive order were to be passed, the Senate disagreed with, the Senate absolutely could pass a contradictory resolution or piece of legislation. And the president could veto that, and then the Senate could override that veto, right? All of those things could happen. The standard that the Constitution sets, the executive orders are within the parameters set by the bylaws. And that's very purposeful because bylaws have a 1-week delay, which means that within that 1-week span, no change to the bylaw can be made. Therefore, the president could make that rule. I want to rein back once again, because the question here is whether to vote yes on the first version of the bill that does not have section 6 in red added, the second version of the bill, or no on both of them. And I'd appreciate hearing some commentary from those we haven't heard speak on yet on this issue and giving us a chance to respond to any other feedback.
Senator Littlefield?
How many members are there on Senate? It's 27, right? The bill needs to be updated. 7A, it says 1 copy to each member of Senate, 24 copies in total. So I think it's using the old number of senators.
Good catch. There's one.
Yeah, in fact, we should probably drop the total counts and just have them as they are, because to keep it adaptable for the future. Before we open and edit one of those, let's choose which one it is that we're doing so we don't do it.
Senator Carlson?
The only reason why I am raising a kind of a point of contention is because of the two different bill types. We're arguing that the initial bill type is a restriction of the initial definition. I believe the second, to be fronted by Senator Jha, is just a continuation of that narrowing of that definition. why does the logic of if we don't want it to happen, we just shouldn't say it, not apply to the bill in the first place, in the initial bill as a whole, and say that we have this kind of executive order entity that exists twice in the legal code. And we leave it at that so that it is an all-around emergency use and for future reference. Like, to me, it's kind of like pick a side, either just like, we're either gonna wanna define it all the way, or we're gonna wanna leave it where it is. I'm not so sure if providing additional definitions is like acceptable without saying Senate has the right to overturn it in some form, way, shape, or form, or specifically protecting a student's quote unquote employment at the association in the light of a now narrowed / more defined executive order.
Senator Shaw, response?
Yeah, I think what you're getting at, there's no mention of any specific application of the executive order in Senator Wang and I's version of the legislation. And that's very purposeful, right? There's another route we could have gone, you're correct to say, which could have been if it pertains to finances, it has to do blah, blah, and blah, and if it pertains to personnel, it has to do blah, blah, and blah. And as has been pointed out, the whole purpose of the executive order is that it's a uniquely flexible instrument. The whole purpose of the executive is that they're a uniquely flexible individual, right? The Senate necessarily deliberates at length. Look at us, we're arguing over like a couple of sentences, and the individual person, the president, can make an individual personal decision, which will necessarily be faster, you know, more immediate, more executive, you could say. And for that reason, I think that I think we can discuss whether or not the executive order can remove a sitting elected official. I don't think that needs to happen in passing the base form of this legislation. If we do want to include that definition or a different definition, let's have another bill. This bill just specifies that an executive order can't be whispered by the president. It needs to be emailed out to everyone. Literally, that's all it does, right? Because at present, there's nothing stopping President Wexler from saying to, for instance, her chief of staff, I issue this executive order. That's as much an executive order as anything else at the moment. After this legislation in our version passes, it needs to be written, it needs to be sent to a certain group of people, and there's a few other restrictions added. And I think that's a step in the right direction, and this is not the forum to discuss item 6.
Senator Carlson and then Adler.
Can I, if it's okay, can I ask the authors to explain the the mode or mechanism by which section 4 would take effect?
Senator Shaw.
That by the same mechanisms as a original?
Yeah, they would just issue another executive order, rescinding or withdrawing. It's just to keep this consistent with what executive orders mean in the colloquial sense.
Adler and then Sal.
Yeah, just I wanted to go off point 5 really quick because I noticed the difference between both bills. The executive order shall take effect upon association-wide distribution of the directive, except for mediums include are not limited to email, website, and social media. I would just prefer stronger language regarding like one distribution, and then we could add other means on top of that. But the way the language is and stands makes it seem like the president could email some people, they could show it on social media some way, they could go on another website. I think just having a baseline and then adding on top of it for maximum distribution is probably just good to iron that, make that concrete. I do.
There's that.
I think the point of contention as we have right now is, in my interpretation, the section 6 will, in a way, limited the scope and the power of executive order by providing a veto rights. But I also believe that the section 6 will actually open the door for the removal of elected officials. Personally, I'm fine with the bill as it's proposed by the authors. If we can have a promise, we'll have future discussion about that topic.
Senator Wang, then Carlson.
I just wanted to respond to Senator Adler's point because I don't think it was adequately responded to. For the change of, I guess, the media. Let's just imagine that for some reason, there are students with no access to their association-wide emails, then an association-wide email distribution just. So these are situations that we honestly can't foresee, which is why it's flexible. Now, as Senator Shaw mentioned very well, when you start to limit things, when you start to make it more inflexible, that's when things begin breaking. And that's when we could have to break legal code to deal with a specific situation.
I'd like to motion to make, to vote on. I can't do that? Can we vote on it? Just no vote. I'm gonna do the bill with liaison. I was gonna make a vote on it and then we. That's not how it works.
That was a question.
We could amend that one, if we were gonna pass it, because it has, totals of senators that are, this is from one certain.
It was true.
But isn't it still about? It's not a vote. Motion to vote on a bill to specify executive orders as an explicit power to ASCCB president, the bill with liaison committees amendments.
Okay.
By hand vote.
There's been a motion to vote on a bill to specify executive orders as an explicit power to ACCC's president, specifically the bill with liaison committees amendments by hand vote. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Senator Zhang. Now discussion.
Yeah, that's,
Senator Zhang.
that's, so actually, while we put out the whole bill with changes for better understanding, it's actually an amendment to previous bill. So it's not a bill by itself, but rather an amendment. And also could I take this chance to ask Senator Wang a question about his previous statement? So Senator Wang just said sometimes it may be required for the president to break the bylaws, but the Constitution said the executive order has to be lawful. So it has to be implied the bylaws cannot be broken by executive order yet.
Senator Wang.
Let me just give it to you very straight. I appreciate what Senator Shalala and Chair Leah have done last year, but I disagree with that constitutional amendment. I wish it wasn't there, but it's already there. So there's nothing that- and I do agree with you that it can't break the bylaws, but yeah, you're right. I do.
Senator Shalala, would you also?
I disagree. Lawful means lawful. It doesn't mean subservient to the bylaws. It could mean that, and you can sue in JC if you think it means it. I also wanted to take the moment to comment on the question of item 5. Well, I did initially agree with you, Senator Carlson. I actually reread our own legislation and realized that I think that it already covers this base. It says the president or their designee shall make every reasonable effort to maximally distribute and publicize their order. That means that can
I remove them if they don't?
well, they're out of their, I mean, we don't currently have a mechanism by which we can remove elected officials other than by recall election. But you can add one if you'd like, but it's violation of legal code for them to fail to maximally distribute. And in general, our association does, like every other legal association of any kind, relies on a lot of trust, including that people will follow rules. I yield.
Senator Carlson.
I think we're in like some type of objection. I was gonna say I rescind my motion.
Okay, okay. Senator Carlson.
I'd like to make a motion to reject the amendments from the liaison committee.
Okay, there's been a motion to reject the amendments from liaison committee. Is there a second? Second by Adler. We're now in discussion.
Call the question.
Objection.
Do you rescind your call the question, Senator Wang?
Yes.
Senator Shaw?
Amendments to what from liaison committee?
The bill.
Well, sorry.
We're still in discussion on this.
I rescind my motion.
Floor's open, Senator Carlson.
I'd like to make a motion to rescind the amendments from liaison committee made upon the bill to specify executive orders as an explicit power to ASCCB president.
Is it fine if I heard reject?
I heard reject.
Oh,
Did I
perfect.
say that?
He said rescind.
Oh, okay, all right, so that's fine.
There's been a motion to reject the amendments made by the Senate Liaison Committee upon the made on the bill to specify executive orders and explicit power to use the ASCCSB president. There's a second.
Second.
Second by Adler, no discussion. All right, call the question, objection to call the question.
Consent.
All right, consent, objection to consent. Seeing none, motion passes. Okay. Secretary Shalom,
Or motion to open the, a bill to specify executive orders of implicit power to ASU.
then a motion to open a bill to specify executive orders as explicit power to ASCC speak.
Second.
Seconded by, I wrote first, no discussion. Call the question. I call the question, objection to call the question.
Consent.
I consent, seeing none, motion passes. Let's now open. Right here. Sean,
Motion to amend section 6, item A to read one copy to each member of the Senate, section 6, item B to read one copy to each executive officer in the executive director.
motion to amend section 6, item A to read one copy to each member of the Senate. Section 6, item B to read one copy to each executive officer and the executive director. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Rowan, on discussion.
No question.
I call the question, objection to call the question.
Consent.
I consent, objection, consent. Seeing none, motion passes. Floor is open. Senator White,
Motion to close the bill to specify executive orders as an explicit power to ASCCS.
it's been a motion to close the bill to specify executive orders as explicit power to ASCC president with amendments. Is there a second? Second. Second by Yamanisha, on discussion.
No question.
I call the question, objection, call the question.
Consent.
Consent, objection, consent. Seeing none, motion passes. Floor is open. Senator Shawna,
Motion to pass the bill to specify executive orders as an explicit power to the ASCCFB president with amendments via hand vote.
there's been a motion to pass a bill to specify executive orders as explicit power to ASCC's president with amendments by hand vote. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Senator Rowan, on discussion.
No question.
I call the question, objection, call the question.
Consent.
I consent, objection, consent. Seeing none, motion passes. Okay, same deal. Yeses, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Noes, raise your hand. Abstentions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 10, 0, 5. Bill passes. Okay.
With the margin.
Next, we have bill to amend the TOC legal code. Floor is open. Senator Rowe.
Okay, I feel like this is pretty non-controversial, but this was requested by both the president and Chris, who's currently serving as the chief technology officer. They've been doing great work and want to expand their office and make sure it fits in better with the current resources pertaining to technology in the association. Awesome.
Floor is open. for motions, comments, questions. Words of any kind. Senator Rowe.
Motion to pass a bill to amend the TOC legal code via hand vote.
There's been a motion to pass a bill to amend the POC legal code by hand vote. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Zalman, on discussion.
Question.
Call the question, objection, call the question.
Consent.
Senator Shah.
Point of order.
Yeah.
Can't call the question for a second.
That's a really good.
All right.
Call the question.
I call the question, objection, call the question.
Consent.
Objection, consent. Seeing none, motion passes. Same deal. Hands for yeses. Keep them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Hands for noes. Abstentions. Okay, passes unanimously. Very pretty one, yeah. I appreciate that. Okay. Oh my God, we did it. We don't do full recess until 9, but we can do recess now.
I motion to enter into a 15-minute recess until 8.
Wait. What if we didn't?
Come on.
We can talk discuss.
Wait.
What's next?
I heard a motion to enter a 15-minute recess until.
Now, 8. I amend my motion to enter into a 10-minute recess until 8:37.
I have a motion to enter a 10-minute recess until 8:37. There's a second. No second, motion dies. Senator Thompson.
For the sake of the minute takers, it has to be at least 15 or at least 15.
Sorry.
How much would you guys like?
Is it fine now or would you prefer later? Is there?
It's fine now.
Oh. Senators up.
I'm going to enter into a 15 minutes recess until 8:43
Is
PM.
there a motion to enter 15-minute recess until 8:43 PM? Is there a second?
Second, Carlson.
Second by Carlson. We're not discussion.
All questions.
All right, call the question. Victor, call the question.
Consent.
Consent, Victor, consent. Seeing none, motion passes. 8:43. Senate unallocated funding, EPIT funding, Senator Chalmers.
Hey, everybody, I'm gonna go to the big podium. For discussion on funding, we can go to closed session, but this part can be open. Okay, so I've given everybody a document. This is the proposal that you all saw in your email a couple weeks ago. This was supposed to be given out at the meeting that ended up being on Zoom, so I apologize for the delay. I hope that all of you had a chance to review the broad ideas here, at least digitally. And well, I can't demand it of you because I've given you the paper copy. If everyone could close all of their devices so we can go into like a discussion, that would be great. So we have over $50,000 in the high impact project fund that we'd like to, this is open session. Yeah, sorry. I'll let you guys, just give it. Thank you. Yeah. So we have over $50,000 in the high impact project fund. And last I checked, over, but I think now close to $100,000 in an allocated account. And the purpose of those funds is to, I mean, really collectively, it's to provide value that can't otherwise be provided in the association. This particular mobile food pantry pilot program is something that I've been working on for quite a while alongside the rest of the Senate Leadership Office, which is Amelia and then our fantastic chiefs of staff, Ava and Kate. And everyone on that team participating in creating this. I'll let people kind of skim for a bit here, so I'll just talk in the background about what this is. The key idea here is that the food bank is great. The food bank is one of our best performing units, and in fact, it's definitely our best performing enterprise unit, yeah, at least in my opinion. It also is one of the most obviously honoring, one of those units most obviously honoring the real mission of Associated Students, which is to provide value to students through the collective pooling of our funds. An issue, though, that's raised with the food bank's format is that it's physically located in this very building, and the people who want to pick up food from it need to physically come here and leave and go home. Now, this doesn't accommodate people with disabilities, but moreover, it's just inconvenient. Additionally, the food bank is not known as a resource by all the people who are eligible to do that. This project seeks to pilot a program to solve all three of those issues at once: accessibility, convenience, and outreach. And the idea is pretty simple. Get a big truck, fill it with all of our delicious foods that we keep at the food bank, drive it around Isla Vista, Delita, and the downtown Santa Barbara area, providing food directly to students in need. The project would be administered by a high impact project team, which would primarily consist of already existing staff at the food bank, but would also include a liaison with the Senate and a couple of administrative officers, which I can get into later. If everyone would follow along to the very last page, you'll see these photos of these food banks. I want to be honest, this is probably not what the result will look like. This is like the most expensive version of what this could look like. But just aspirationally, this is what some MFT programs across the country look like. That top photo is from Connecticut, I believe. The bottom photo is from somewhere in California. I think this is a really great opportunity for us to leverage the High Impact Project Fund. I think it's exactly what this fund was designed for. And I want to field a discussion on this project. I know that Senator Von Zed in particular, maybe a couple of other people, but I'm forgetting exactly who, asked some great questions and we took some answers the first time this was discussed. But maybe if others are seeing this for the first time, or have come up with other questions since then, that's something to bring up. Now's a great time. Please be as adversarial as you can be. Let's get a good proposal out of this, so we can finalize our version of it and then begin working with the food bank in terms of finalizing this on their end. And in the interest of full transparency, I want to be clear that I met with the associate director for enterprise units and business units, as well as the senior food bank leadership, both staff and student, on this topic. And while they're very, very excited, there's definitely some roadblocks they'll need to overcome before this could be fully implemented. So there cannot be a vote of allocation tonight. That being said, as early as next week, we could begin the process of finalizing a memorandum of understanding, or begin the process of creating a memorandum of understanding with the food bank. A realistic timeline here is that this project could be deployed in the fall. And the inter-year spending does pose a challenge, but it is not an insurmountable one. It would just require an additional affirmation by us. So this would move, we'd be using fiscal year 24 money to do fiscal year 25 stuff. That's totally okay, so long as we stay on top of it and do so with good legal counsel. Okay, so if the chair would allow it, I'd love to just enter into an open discussion here, whatever people want. Is that good for me? Spec, shoot.
Okay, just to start off, this is so exciting, like this genuinely makes me so happy. This is why I think we're all in Senate. Like stuff like this is really such a good use of time, you know what I'm saying? Like so much of what we discuss at Senate is not good use of time, but this makes me really happy. Now, I do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
For starters, they're not listed by page number, but for project plan, there are a couple of pie charts.
Yeah.
And they have numbers that pertain to food security, like numbers. Are these, like, where did you get these numbers? Because the thing is, for me, is I've been looking for numbers like this for like quite a while, and they're, the best I could find was like a website that dates back to like 2018, that says 48% of students are food. They're not more specific.
Yeah, this is documentation that comes straight from the food bank, and that came out of my discussion with them. I believe what I have here is publicly available, but if it isn't, I'll ask them to make it publicly available. I'm sorry that you weren't able to find it on your own. But this is the food bank's data, and I've included it here to show just how good the food bank is and what they do. In that, in 4 years, from 2018 to 2022, almost exclusively because of the food bank, we brought the share of students who had very low food security in UCSB from half to a quarter, which is a dramatic change. And the population that we're targeting with this initiative is really that red quarter, the low food security quarter, which you'll notice hasn't really changed. I should say quintile, hasn't really changed since 2018. And that's because low food security people are people who are able to consistently access food, but there are shortfalls in that. And included in that group are people with disabilities who are able to get food bank food, but it is extremely difficult, takes hours out of their day, and so on and so forth. Moreover, there's issues with people who simply don't know of the resource. So I hope I addressed your question and also maybe expand a little bit on it.
Yeah, that does address my question. I guess what that kind of points to is I wish there's like a better data, if that makes sense. That's something that I guess future Senates can work on. Or honestly, our Senate can work on, we still have the time, but I guess that's just something that we're looking for now. Second thing is a little bit more of a small thing, more of an implementation detail, but many of the items within this food pantry would be, I guess, perishable, for example, foods and like, I guess, if you're trying to do milk or something like that. Do you have plans to put like refrigeration into the
Yeah, that's, you correctly identified that as an implementation detail. I can answer that, but I want to preface with the fact that this is pending a lot of research that needs to happen as part of the project. And I want to direct your attention before I answer your question to phase 1 and phase 2 of the budget outline. In particular, for phase 1, we're going to collect data. We're going to go out and survey and ask students. that's gonna be huge. So that's gonna be volunteer driven because it's too expensive to pay the food bank staff to be out there collecting that data. So we're gonna need volunteer pollsters. I'm aspirationally hoping that PERD might step up and help because they have so much tabling expertise. We'll see. So we'll get data, and regardless of where the project goes, that data will be publicized. And I'm sorry, Jeff, I'll get you in just a second. As far as refrigeration goes, refrigeration, roughly speaking, adds $5,000 to $15,000 to the cost of the vehicle if we're buying a vehicle. And that's a cost that we need to decide whether or not it's worth it. I personally think that this project would be not done justice if we don't provide fresh fruits and vegetables as part of it. Because I think that a big issue is that people associate food banks and general food accessibility services with low quality food, which is not true of our food bank. Our food bank provides the same quality, in fact, higher quality often food than what you can get in our Isla Vista grocery stores. I want that to be true about the mobile food bank as well. That's a question of how much money we have to spend versus, other things we want to spend on. But it is the food bank staff wants refrigeration for the truck, and I want refrigeration. So if you want refrigeration in the truck, we'll have refrigeration. Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, what Senator Wang said is an incredible project. I'm really proud to, I don't know, to be able to witness it. So great job. As far as conducting needs-based assessments, I wanted to say, I live at the Dolores Huerta House in Isla Vista, which is the food justice co-op, and I actually know a lot of my housemates have been grappling with food insecurity in Isla Vista. They've kind of done some preliminary work conducting that kind of research, and we're talking about implementing like activism hours at our house. So if we need to conduct more need-based assessments in the future, I think this is something my house, particularly food justice in Isla Vista, they'd be super, super down for. So thank you. We'd be happy to talk to that. Yeah.
I'm super glad you brought that up, and definitely we'll follow up on that. Major?
Yeah, I think this proposal has some very good intention and very well thought, and thank you and your chief of staff Kelly for it. So my question is, I agree with everything you said about food banks only need usage. It has many disadvantages come from it. However, it also means the majority of people who are getting stuff from the food bank is the student of this university. If we create a mobile food bank and we drive it around Alvista, Greater, and even downtown, the wealth would be available to only the student or the general public. I'm not arguing for either of them, but I think I want to ask a question.
Thank you, and I'm super glad that you noticed that, and I was really waiting for someone to bring that up. I purposely didn't touch too much on this topic, although in certain places I say students and community members in the proposal. There's a couple of facts of life here that apply. One, the food bank's lock-in funded food cannot be given to anyone other than students who are eligible for it. Students who are eligible for it need to make less than $14,000 and some change of their own individual income, or be qualified for CalFresh or one of the other state or federal programs. In my opinion, this barrier is unreasonable. I think if you're making $15,000 a year, you still can't afford to live and eat and everything else that you need to do here in Isla Vista. And if we wanted to change that on the food bank side, that would take an amendment to that contract language. So if we were to be funding the food stuffs themselves, if that money that paid for them came from the High Impact Project Fund, then that food would not be bound by that regulation. And then that food could go to students or community members who aren't necessarily eligible. Then that poses the question of whether or not we want to be distributing food to community members, or whether or not it's more important to be spending associated students' money and feeding associated students. I think this doesn't need to be a zero-sum question. I think that we can prioritize students while still giving food to community members. I think an unfortunate fact that many people might not be aware of here is that even our food bank throws out a bunch of food. And that's the nature of having perishable foods in a food bank, right? They're never going to be throwing out cans of soup, but they are constantly throwing out, fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, things like that. So I think having a process by which we can target students first, and then community members can also share in that would be great. The implementation details there are difficult, and that will need to be worked out. I agree. There were questions. Yeah, Mike or let's
Yeah, so like we've stated, this is really exciting. This is really cool. I don't know if this is gonna seem like a dumb question, but I saw that it says to like bring the food to people. I'm getting like an ice cream truck kind of vibe. So, like, are you driving around IB and like, I guess like actually bringing the food to them, or is it gonna be like a stationary truck?
That's a really great question, and it's not stupid at all. It's like the core question of how the functioning here works. The truth of the matter is that almost all of these programs that are deployed for a different type of population, not students. And as a result, most of them are that latter category where you find a parking lot, you park there and you start giving out food from there. That's fine. I want the ice cream truck. I want it really bad. I want it to happen. However, it poses additional liability questions because if someone were to be struck by the vehicle while it was giving out food, that causes all kinds of questions. So like many of these questions, I can't give you a firm answer. The aspiration is to have it mobile in the sense that it's driving, stops in front of some houses, people come out, take some food, drives to the next kind of half of the block and goes from there. There might be a middle ground where it parks at the end of a block for 15 minutes, gives out food and then keeps moving. We'll have to work out the exact details. That's also a question of whether or not eligibility checks need to be made. Because if they do need to be made, then it's impractical to have it really rolling. It'll need to stop, process people. That's another reason that I don't want to be doing eligibility checks. That kind of all ties in, right? The ideal scenario here is that we just give the food out, like literally just take bags and give it to people. Well, sorry, it sounded a little bit you had here.
So, the money for all of this would be coming out of the high impact project fund, yes.
Yes, that being said, if we were wanting to fund other projects through the high impact project fund, if we wanted to fund more than what's currently available in that balance, we can fairly freely move money from other accounts into that account. But the allocation for this would have to come from the high impact project fund, but the allocations to the high impact project fund could come from a number of sources.
I want to stress that because it's out, it seems like it's numbered into different phases. It would be acceptable to fund this in specific allocations or numbers of amounts that we can do it. Interval it out until we have enough data to proceed.
Yes, I would shy away from advocating for that route. I think it's a reasonable option, but I, as an advocate for the program, I do think like any other program, if it's given financial security, it's more likely to proceed quickly. But I agree that, yeah, right, if we throw a bunch of money at it and then find out in phase 2 that actually we can't buy this truck, then we're in a kind of a limbo. It's difficult. I'd say if we were to give a dividing number, it wouldn't be an exact question of just taking phase 1's $1,000 just for the data analysis and a couple of other points. It would be a little bit more than that. I struggle to give you a number, probably in the ballpark of 5,000 to 7,000 for the groundwork. And that might sound steep, but if we need to remember that these are people who already have a job working at Food Bank. We need to compensate them for their time doing all the other professional work that needs to get done. As much as possible, we'll use AS resources, which are cheaper, but the time of professionals costs them. I can get back to you with a more specific kind of number in terms of how much to fund if we want to just do the research part. And I do want to be clear that this whole project is a research project, right? It's called a pilot program because the end goal, like, okay, let's say everything goes right. Let's say we get our ice cream truck and we can give it out to whoever we want and everything goes right, step by step by step. By the end of fall quarter, we would already be like, okay, this is great. This is working well. For winter quarter, we would pool together funds from other sources to keep the program going. And then during winter quarter, we formulate ballot language to include funding for this in the food bank funding and make the program permanent for 25-26 school year.
I mean, 100%, because it seems like there's a very clear hypothesis here, which is to see what effect mobile food pantries have on affecting the graphs that have been presented here. So it seems solid. Another question was kind of like, in terms of looking at the images on the back page, there's a lot of almost like, that is a lot of infrastructure there.
Yeah.
In just each of the images. Another thing is like, depending on the van model, depending on if you go for a truck, depending on if it like opens from the back, all like a bunch of different questions in terms of how you want to do the pilot program. Have the project creators, have you guys like thought about doing, like a lot of like full volunteer work and setup, just like you construct it yourselves, you provide like a pilot or seed project funding to undergraduate engineering students to then kind of pilot the creation of such a vehicle that might have to do with then, once it's ready for departure, you know, you have like a nice christening with the food bank or something like that.
Yes, absolutely thought about that option, and I struggle to say things that could incur liability on the record. So without saying anything that could incur liability on the record, within the confines of a safe and emission compliant vehicle, as grunge as possible would be great. Not only cheaper, but also it's much more engaging. These sleek silver bullet, you know, modified school buses that give out food like this don't actually match our community, right? You go into Isla Vista and you see a very particular, I mean, for lack of a better word, aesthetic that I wish that our programs in AS matched. I think AS tries to be something it's not. Tries to be, it doesn't try to be too professional, it tries to be too corporate. Right, and I don't want it to be corporate. In the ideal, this would be a used vehicle, it would have murals painted on it, it would be ragtag and made as cheap as we can possibly make it. That being said, there are other places within AS where we freely flow our cash. And if this isn't where we want to put our cash, I'm just not sure where it is. So there is extra value that could be added with more funding. Bootstrapping it has a value, but like, I'm not bootstrapping refrigeration, sorry.
100%. In terms of parts and components, I have no doubt in my mind, good idea to buy good.
And the flux capacitor.
Yeah.
I think there was some question on this side of the room that I ignored. Yes, please.
I just want a quick reminder of how much do we have in the HIP fund currently?
58,
50? Okay, because I
or
did.
maybe
some-
56. Don't see.
Okay. If we have 56, that'd be beautiful. Because I did some quick math, because I noticed that there weren't totals, so I did some cute little math. And so like on the low end of the budget, if you have the 15 instead of the 30, like the lowest it could be is 39K, and then the highest would be 54. So in case we don't have that 56K to use all of the funds, is there an alternative plan of resources that you'd like to use or have thought of?
Yeah, the key alternate resource is Senate unallocated. The secondary key alternate resource is a little place called reserves. And then moreover, might be possible to pull some funding from SEAL, might be possible to find funding in related units within AS. I haven't spoken to any units on that topic, so I can't speak for them. I can theoretically imagine that there are units that are at least pertinent and might want to cover relevant expenses to their mission statement. I'm wary of pushing outside the boundaries of mission statements. I know that we like to do the coalition building of pooling funds from a bunch of BCUs. There's a time and a place for that. I don't think this is the time or the place. That being said, those BCUs that work on the forms of equity that this would provide might want to contribute. And that's like a conversation that needs to happen, that just hasn't happened yet. I would lean toward asking for the Senate to fund this fully, whether that's directly from HIP or through a movement of funds to HIP and then through HIP. That bridges really neatly into the discussion more broadly on other proposals that are on the table here. But before we go there, are there any more topics? And does anyone have anything else to talk about? But yeah.
I just want to mention something, I guess it's my last thing, but I want to mention why I don't think it would be a good idea to, I guess, provide for the community members at large and why we should make this just for students. I feel there has been no arguments for this, and I will, I guess, be presenting them. For starters, there's that classic, well, because AS students are paying for this, AS students should receive the benefits, and that's something that I used to apply.
Yeah.
The second thing is, I do volunteer at the Goleta Food Bank, and the biggest difference between that food bank and our AS food bank is the items are fundamentally different. Most of the people who go to the Goleta Food Bank, they get items that are things that you can make in the kitchen. For example, they give out yams, they give out potatoes. Now, can you imagine a UCSB kid during like lunchtime, finals time, lunchtime, trying to eat a raw yam? Because I can't imagine that. So for starters, like the market, the items that they're dedicated towards are fundamentally different. The reason these community members have different food banks that they go to they don't tend to go to AS food banks. Yeah. The needs of students are different than the needs of people. And that's why I think that we should double down, focus on AS, due paying members, undergraduate students, and just leave it at that.
I totally hear that. I don't want to launch into a debate on that topic because I think that that's a little counterproductive. I will say that the primary question is whether or not to open this resource to the population of people experiencing homelessness within Isla Vista. That's the key question we're discussing. There's a philosophical question, but the real question is, if a member of that community comes and asks for food from the truck, what do they say? If they say, go to the Goleta Food Bank, that's fine. That's totally an option. But it also puts the people in the food truck in an uncomfortable position. And honestly, it's pretty cheap not to have to turn people away. The total number of people in that community in Isla Vista is less than 100. And so I hear you. Let's discuss this maybe offline. It's probably not the best forum for this.
I have the project creators thought about just using like a simple, just like the dining commons flash your
Totally not.
student ID.
Yeah, totally not. Totally not.
Okay, awesome.
Sorry, I forgot to mention that there's another question with SBCC students. So totally, all of that needs to be discussed. If people want to discuss this here, I don't want to shut down the debate. I just don't think that it's necessarily like what we're talking about right here, right now. So I do want to keep the focus there. Okay, so with everyone's permission, I'm going to move on to something else really quickly. In terms of funding from the High Impact Project Fund, the Senate Leadership Office essentially has 3 things we want you to fund, maybe all of them, maybe some of them, maybe none of them, whatever. But this is one of them right here. The funding ask is in that range, about around 40 to 50K. There's a separate ask that I want to recognize Senator Carlson here, put in a bunch of work here. There's a second ask, which is for an outdoor piano installation on campus in conjunction with the music department. There's a brand that we've found, a designer that creates a very one-of-a-kind product here that fits our needs. And the quote is about 58K, which sounds insane for a piano. Let me explain why it costs that much. And then you can still tell me it's too expensive and I'll agree. Basically the issue at hand is that if you just install a piano into a public space, first of all, it's going to rot and break after the first rain. Well, let's say you manage to seal it, then it's going to sound awful. But let's say it doesn't sound awful. Then you're going to need to hire someone to tune it forever until it breaks. Here we are, which is expensive. And not just expensive, it also creates a burden on whatever department needs to do this, right? So for instance, where this project started was Senator Carlson goes, hey, music department, we put a piano outside, and music department said, we don't have anyone who could tune a piano, which is insane to me, but also means that like you genuinely just don't have this staff. So that leaves us with electric pianos.
It's a class.
And the reality is that there does not exist any other electric piano that we could install in this space that would accomplish what we want, which is a beautiful object that matches our campus and the trim of our campus, that's longevitous, that sounds actually good, that is powered by solar panels that are installed with the kit, that is fully paintable, completely weatherproof. They proved that, took one of these pianos and dunked it in the ocean and kept it there for a period of time and took it out and played it perfectly. It's fully encased in concrete. And it still sounds amazing. And then one of the biggest selling points here is that the programmable nature of, because it's an electric piano and it's got an integrated computing aspect, it could be programmed in such a way to lock out people who are just mashing keys, which is a huge, huge value add. If you have a piano in public spaces, a problem that can come is noise disruption, right? Or hours of the day that you don't want noise, or during finals week, maybe that could be distracting to people in nearby classrooms, right? This piano could just turn off during finals. It just doesn't produce any noise. It could lock you out if you just mash a bunch of keys and a cat walked over the keyboard, right? So there's a lot of features here. It's also incredibly expensive. It's also, you're not going to find a cheaper option. So it's either we want it or we don't, but the expense itself isn't really negotiable. We looked really, really hard.
I was gonna say that like, I did literally get an email today from the music department saying that they're kind of looking around to relocate certain things, so obviously we don't have to fund this today. If we, you know, have money down the quarter and we're like, shit, we have it, that's lovely to spend. But I will be following that really closely to see if we do have staff that can help with the maintenance of the project as well, and maybe that could lower the cost by a couple of thousand in case, you know, for online maintenance, what it would need, but well, granted, it's also electric system. Matter. But in general, we'll provide updates as we go, but I do like to have a nice litmus test to see if people are still interested in something like that after hearing the price tag.
It's expensive. Senator Rowley.
Also a note on the price, the 58,000 is like a comprehensive price, so it includes the shipping, which is international, so that's a pretty good deal in my opinion, and it also includes a customizable plaque. So we could put like ASU/CSB on it, or 74 Senate, something like that, so.
It also includes installation, which is a big cost.
Yeah.
Senator, let's go around. the room.
Yeah, I think for piano that about 58,000 is high, but not unacceptable. But my question is, I have no doubt it's a very good quality piano, but like our electronic, no matter how small the chance is, it still could be go wrong. It still could go wrong. So how long will the manufacturer offers quality guarantee for this piano?
We haven't negotiated the warranty terms yet. That would come at a later stage, but of course, we haven't answered that question before funding or before a purchase was made. Maybe funding might need to be approved before an answer can be given. I personally am obviously going to push for 10 years. We'll see what we can get. And that will also be a conversation that will include the executive director, others, before anything can be finalized, and also the music department. We might also want to consider buying insurance for the product separately if we're unhappy with the warranty terms. That's something we can discuss when we know more. But I'm glad you're asking such an astute question. Thank you.
So I was curious if you've thought about if the engineering and music department could create their own version of this piano, and if it could be, if it would cost less, or in possibly using the Senate unallocated funds to go into the HIP fund, and then it could be a research project.
My guess is the company that produced this piano probably spent $5 to $10 million developing. So my answer is almost certainly no. Making any physical object is incredibly expensive, and manufacturing a one-of-a-kind physical object on an expertise that you don't have is pretty expensive too. Finding research, a completely different direction we could go is try to find research funding for this. I don't know if the association's ever tried to lock in research funding, and while I don't want to shoot down the idea, I don't think it's probably the most productive direction.
I was talking to my roommates about it, and they gave me like the same kind of idea, like, what if we could build one? And so I drew up like designs of me like creating, like pouring out like sandwich concrete, like slabs, and like cutting them to shape, reinforcing rebar, and then like everywhere you don't want it, you just get rid of the hammer, so you carve out your shaping piano. And like, I did it, and I was like looking at the cost, and I was looking at how much, you know, kind of things like that, buying parts for amplifier, things like that. I still cost like $20,000. So I was like, at that point, I was like, should I spend it like professionally and do it, you know, like go big, right? And then like, who knows, if it rains, it'll probably like crack, like my piano would. It would crack under like one rainfall, and it's like, I don't know how to pour cement concrete, you know? I feel like I didn't know if I wanted to risk that, whereas this one's very professional. So I just was like, all right.
Thank you for your.
Yeah.
Oh, two things. One, how much do we have in Senate unallocated currently? I thought it was only like,
In the ballpark of 100,000, but the reason I don't have the exact number is because there's some things happening. But in the ballpark.
and second question, have you guys considered doing like, you know, those wind chimes where people can like go up and tap them, kind of like xylophones? What if you did one of those instead of a piano? That way you don't have to worry about maintenance. And it would still be like, wind chimes are more accessible than a piano, in my opinion. But
So I think the reason the piano is such an attractive option is that in a very real way, it like elevates the campus. Right? We would be putting a fairly small fraction of our budget toward meaningfully, 127. For that. We would be, meaningfully elevating the campus space, which is not something we very often do, and I think that that's great. I see the value like of a cheaper option here. That being said, I don't think it has the same effect, right? If we install this piano, this is an object that like radically transforms the space that it's in. There will be piano music there during busy hours. It'll probably be good. There's a lot of people here who can play piano. Like I myself can't play piano. This project isn't for me, but it's for me in the sense that I would be sitting next to this piano and hearing the music, and like it'll be a social space built in. Frankly, I'm imagining one of those xylophone wind chime type things, and like someone will occasionally pitter patter on it, but it'll be an art project. It won't be, central to the space that it's in.
Also, to that point, I think that like the really appealing option or like aspect of this specific option in a product is that, like Brian was saying, or Senator Schwalm was saying, we can literally like turn it off. So again, during finals reading. Well, no, because like you don't want like a kid coming up and like banging on it. I feel like that's just like my worst nightmare. And also, speaking to like elevating the space, I'm pretty sure, did you say we would be the second campus in the US to have this beside Harvard? So that's kind of a flex in my mind, but
We're already out of here.
just a little bit.
Be like Harvard.
I think also having, like how much money we currently have in the account since Monday, puts into perspective that we will still have around 70K for center unallocated for the rest of the year. So that makes me more favor because we have the funds to do it. And it's also really cool.
Of course,
So, go ahead, please.
of course, like, I know these are huge price tags, right? And that's why it's so good when we have like, obviously, like real paper to look at. Perhaps in the coming weeks will come with, more of like a correspondence, more of quotes, like really formatted in a project format. And really try to hammer home some things for you guys. One thing that I think is kind of important is just like, this is something that we can definitely kind of treat as we go along. We have a couple weeks left, we'll try to hammer things out, see what it looks like on the budget. And of course, because HIP is still kind of like, it's an unused thing. And so we'll definitely be working together with AS staff and making sure that we kind of get like a meeting in and to kind of figure out like just how these avenues really work so that we can make sure that everything's cared for, especially when we leave any type of kind of seed project or seed little budget cushion for next year's Senate as well. That's something that's always kind of done, in my opinion, in good faith. So say like, hey guys, here's a little bit of left on, use it to start or jumpstart new projects or conduct research, et cetera. And that could be something that we do working together with staff to kind of help make sure that vision's carried over, especially since this project here is multiple weeks. The piano would be installed in multiple weeks. So that's something that we will be taking into consideration. Of course. Hey, yo.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, we have multiple financial experts here. But to my understanding, this 127 it's only lasts until the fiscal year of this year, which will be June. And after that, we'll have another 100,000 coming in unallocated.
150.
150, yeah. So we have a lot of money, and I think we should more thoughts into how to spend it than saving it a year.
I'm not answering that. You can.
On this topic, and then before I do want to make sure that the discussion makes sense to everyone. There's one other funding expense that we'd asked for. We don't necessarily need all three, but we'll get there in a second. Senator John's absolutely right. What happens to this account, it's not eligible for rollover. When this account expires in June, in the end of June, all the money that's in it gets flushed into the general and allocated account, and out of the general and allocated account, 150,000 statutorily goes back into the account. So it'll be re-upped, but there's no way to like carry it over. There's no saving. That's just the money that there is. I want to point out that there's millions of dollars sitting in cash reserves as well. So in the cases of emergencies that might arise, if we were unable to cover the funding shortfall with the money that's in the unallocated account, we could pull money from cash reserves into an allocated. Senator.
Okay, on the topic of like getting this kind of hashed out. I believe they said it would be 8 weeks. Or
6
like,
to 8 weeks is the time between when we place an order to the piano arriving.
right, so I feel like it might be good to kind of get like a vibe check here, if we like the idea or not, so we can kind of initiate that process with them. So hopefully we would have the piano on campus by like week 10 or finals, if, no,
I believe that the process can only start after we pay the down payment. So, because they need to, it's one of a kind, it'll be built for us.
No.
So,
but can we like? Cause we can talk to them still about like some of those.
yeah, we can, like, I can email, like, if everyone sounds like broadly in concordance, I can say, hey, sorry for the delay. Looks like we're clear for funding. I want to be clear that we haven't fully approved it, but whatever you can do to set up
That's
when you're
what I'm
ready,
thinking.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
If people,
Can we do a vibe check, like, one of these guys, thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways? Do we have like, I'm seeing some sideways, do we have like unresolved questions or like concerns that we could hash out today?
It's very cool. My only concern is just like, I remember like Michelle added up the price of this and it's literally like, we could afford a whole nother truck. Which is kind of crazy to think about, like something that people are just walking by and being like, "Ah," and then we could like feed another half of the town. I don't know.
But sorry, the park is also gonna have maintenance, is like my one thing, and this is like permanent, like it truly is gonna be here for like generations, which I feel like is a really cool impact for us to leave. But I agree that like, it is kind of like, we could change a lot of.
Superfluous almost.
so, yeah, I want to expand on that point, which is that the food bank project, first of all, I don't want these to be compared to everything, right? Like, my funding priority is food bank project, way super, like, if we don't manage the piano, sucks. If we don't manage the food bank project, that's a serious failure.
Wow.
And so, but as we're comparing the costs, though, I do want to be clear that this is the 50K for 1/4 of services versus 50K for years of services, quite possibly in the realm of 5 to 10 years at least of guaranteed services. So the actual cost per time is much different, just to be clear. But a totally valid point, and it's expensive, it's sticker shock for sure. I did not like receiving that email.
I don't know, in looking at this from like a health point of view, I feel like they both kind of cover different points of health, whereas the piano, at least for me, art is like completely, if I'm playing the piano or painting, is a way of going into mental health, and it could be like a way that people can take their time to release on campus, and it can go into a decade or more time. Whereas the other one is directly to health, and I support both of these.
Thank you, that's a great.
Yeah, I was gonna say kind of the same thing, like I like the idea of being able to kind of spread our impact across like one thing that's like super, super important, like functional, and another thing that's like kind of campus beautification, just in terms of like the environment and the culture, so I think that they're both really cool projects.
Thank you. Go.
One last point, adding on to that, like one of the major goals that we haven't tackled from our previous strategic vision, which is like what we're supposed to be centering our goals around in the association, was to add like campus beautification projects like this. And we explored a lot of ideas like that last year when I was in the strategic operations office and couldn't really arrive on something that was like cost effective and also meaningful that people could interact with. So I feel like this is a really good way to kind of complete that goal, especially given that the strategic vision will be like in a new cycle starting next year. So be good to check that one off.
Absolutely agree. And wrapping up this point of, sorry, I don't feel it's bizarre to wave at you, but
I have a lot of questions, like we don't have to do it now, but
on the proposals themselves.
yeah, on the piano.
Can I propose the other one and then go back to it? Sorry. Or on the piano specifically?
Yeah,
Okay,
okay. So you see this is like a permanent fixture to campus, right?
I would use the term semi-permanent. Because
Semi-permanent.
I just like, of course, nothing permanent.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Campus is permanent.
Fashion.
Yeah. Okay. So would this be, do you like know where you would want this?
Yes, we do.
Oh, you already, where? I'm
Well,
just curious.
do you have an idea?
I've got 2 different places. One is like right there in the semicircle of the arbor, but the thing is I love that atmosphere and it's already curated by itself. The alternative was kind of near those smoke spots that like you're not supposed to smoke at, but specifically like right behind, like right there, like as where you would potentially, where the university initially promised a bike path between the aisles and the library. There's a space kind of like tucked away there that doesn't have any classrooms. There's no study spaces. And the nearest classroom is like probably Gervet's or like a lecture hall that's behind like 2 sets of doors that you can't hear anything from the outside. So it's like, there's a spot right there underneath a cute little tree, and it would look cute with wind chime, so I'm taking note of that.
I do want to be,
The bike path can go right around.
I do want to
That
be,
seems.
I want to be clear that the placement of the object is,
Please, Senator Shaw speaking.
the shared governance structure of the university means that we can't unilaterally decide, but the music department would be our advocate. It wouldn't be the associated students placing it, it would be the music department placing it. So the music department, honestly, the most likely scenario is that it'll end up out front of the music department building. Like realistically, because that's the building that they have, and so they'll find it easier to put it there. They also are finishing up the seismic renovations there, so wiggling our way in there and saying, "Ooh, you don't need those 5 bike parking spots, you can put a piano there instead," would be good. It also places it in a pretty central location on campus. But yeah, there are location draft proposal that's being worked out, and that isn't really up to us.
Yeah. Wait, okay, so that wouldn't be up to you, but if we pay for it, we don't have a.
Like we have to say, we're gonna negotiate, we're gonna drive for what we can do.
Gotcha.
But at the end of the day, campus planning committee needs to approve fixtures of
Yeah,
any kind.
of course.
So they will probably ask us for multiple proposals and choose the one that suits them best, would be my guess.
Okay, okay. That answers my next question, is like, how are you gonna get admin to approve this? Sounds like you have an advocate.
There's a process, and the music department would be the ones
Okay,
doing the bulk of the heavy lifting.
why, okay, first of all, like me as Soham, I love this, I want to be on campus, but like, why should we as representatives of the of the student body pay for this over something else?
Yeah, I think.
Why not admin is basically what I'm saying. Why doesn't the music department pay for it?
Well, like, again, that's relative in the same way that we were saying, like, comparing this to another expense that we might have isn't really fair because it's a lasting project. And so looking at it as like, oh, this is 60K right now, yes, but over the span of like the next 10-15 years, hopefully it'll last a long time. And again, just to speak to that point, the strategic vision, which is supposed to like orient our goals and inform our decisions in the association, literally has like a goal that's pretty much saying that they want more things exactly like this, that students can interact with on campus, that like enrich spaces, and just add like more value to a lot of different areas in campus. So I think that is probably like the number one reason that we should be spending money on this, because that is literally like from the students for us, so.
For me, it's a philosophy thing. I really do think that students are a product of the environment in which they reside. And I think that if you curate that environment to have things like art, you have very interactive elements of STEM and sciences and gardens, nature and all these beautiful things. I think you take away a lot from it. And so for me, living and growing up next to a piano, I think shaped my experiences. Coming to university, there's a reason why every single dormitory on campus in their lounge spaces have pianos. And so I think that if you put one outside and you really invite that kind of art into that space again, I think you're doing the exact same thing. And all we're doing is supplementing it.
Yeah, I want to combine some responses. I think that there's an element of creating mental health, there's an element of enrichment, there's an element of beautification. The question you're asking is, why are we paying for it? And the answer to that question, in my opinion, is that the funds that associated students have, if you take all of the money that this campus spends, about $1 billion a year, and you start kind of layering it, the most immobile object here is state allocated funding, because the California State Assembly says how you spend it. So there's that like huge chunk. Nothing can be done about it. It's fixed. There's another immobile thing where the UC Regents determined that some funds need to be spent in some way, and so on and so forth. At the very top, there's this tiny skim of less than 1% of our expenditures that are associated students' expenditures. Within that, there's a tiny skim of what's unallocated by Senate. So that's 1% of 1% of our schools' expenditures. What is this for? This is for flexibility. This is for accommodating dynamic, complex, little things that don't really quite fit anywhere else. Why isn't there already an expensive, fancy schmancy, nice piano outdoors? Because who's gonna pay for it? Each department has their own interests that they're vying for. Each department has budgetary realities. The CS department doesn't have enough money for copy paper, literally. And they're the most, like, one of the most expensive departments on campus. Right, they just spend their money in other ways. The music department, if they were to go buy a piano, they would put another piano in their concert halls. They would, use the piano for instruction, as they should, because that's the thing that they're working on. There's not really anyone left in this equation that would advocate for the student and general faculty and everyone else would benefit too, but the student need for the mental health, the beautification, and the sort of enrichment benefits that this would offer. No one's going to advocate for this if not us. Best way to advocate for it is with our money, and we are in a unique financial position this year in this quarter where we have the money to spend on it. So that's my answer to your question. I think it's a great question, by the way.
Okay, that answers really well. I guess the stickling point for me is just, there's no like KPIs for a piano, but there are for like the food truck.
They're good. So we would measure digitally the number of users. And I am exploring, but haven't added this as a formal kind of point yet, trying to monitor the number of people who listened. There's a few different ways to do this. The kind of stupid way to do this is to put up like a security camera and just use computer vision to count the number of people in the vicinity and see if it changes before and after the piano. Of course, it will change. Something like that could be good. A lot of the benefits here are intangible benefits, right? The object we're talking about here is beautiful, even when it's not being played.
Yeah.
It's on one hand, it's literally just an arts installation. Even if it didn't even work, it's an art installation right there. There's the intangible benefit of someone biking past at 15 miles an hour and hearing a couple of notes of piano music and gaining inspiration for a thought that they wouldn't have otherwise had, right? You're never going to KPI that. The reason the food bank lends itself so well to KPIs is because you can measure it in pounds, and you can't measure many of these things. But what can be measured will be measured. Don't worry about it.
Makes sense to me. Okay, last question. I don't know what you have time to. What is it? What's the company called? I just want to see it.
There's like the company that's going to be sourcing the piano for us is called long name. 1 second.
Like, what do I Google to see an image of? You said Harvard had one? Probably.
Concrete,
It's-
rubber, yeah, just do that.
Yeah, or Newton Brown Urban Design. Okay, so moving into the third, unless there was. Cool. Okay, sorry, I know I've been up here for a while. This is all quite important. So there's another way we can spend our HIT money. It could be additional, it could be, sorry, Major, could you? I'm getting like, sorry. However you want to do it, here's the third way we could spend our money. One of the flaws of the high impact project fund, the greatest flaw in my opinion, was that when we wrote the legislation to create it, I and Adam Meyer and everyone else didn't really think, like, kind of assumed that because there's going to be this huge pile of money on the table, people are going to come and support it. The issue is that before that starts, people need to come, like, it needs to start. There needs to be a ball rolling, and then people will start to learn that. So, like, I was telling one of my professors about it, and she was like, "What? Like, seriously?" And so I sent her over the proposal document. She might send us a proposal. On that note, I thought it might be a good expenditure of some of the high impact project funds. It is a very scalable question here, to use them for a competition to gain awareness of the program itself. And the structure here would be, we would take some money. Let's say we took 20K for this, right? We would say that we're fielding submissions for campus projects of any kind, whatever you want. You can ask for $1,000 or $5,000 of funding, let's say. Then we choose some number of winners, however we want to, maybe 2 for 5K and 10 for 1K, whatever we want to do. And then we've also set aside a small amount of money for a prize pool, where from the perspective of the people applying, if you win, if you have the best proposal or the best project, we can figure that out. We will give you a high impact project honorarium in the amount of, let's say, $500. That could be motivating for people to submit, to learn about this, right? there's an even more extreme version of this, right, where we say anyone that submits a complete application will get a $50 check. Right, and that might sound ridiculous, and in fact, I don't necessarily advocate for that, but that guarantees we'll get a lot of complete applications, I tell you that. Right, maybe what we want to do is seek a bunch of applications and reward people for good applications, even if they're not being implemented. Whatever we want, like, this is a very flexible idea here, but basically we want to spend some money in outreach. And I think the best way to outreach this particular program is have people participate in the program, right? It naturally builds coalitions of people because it takes teams to do this stuff. It naturally advertises itself by nature of giving you money. So yeah, that all fits in. And basically I have like a $10,000, $20,000, and $50,000 version of that idea. And any one of those is fine. Just depends on what you want to do. And keep in mind there is that most of those funds would go directly to smaller hit projects. It's not like the overhead is tiny. The overhead would be a few $1,000s as prize money, which you could also just think of as compensation for people doing good work if you feel better about it. It would be legally compensation. So those are the ideas I have. We have.
Yes, so to my understanding, the SACS office are also prepare a HIP proposal. I believe their idea was to let students from each different college to vote about the best lecturer or the best professor of the year, in a way to reward the professor who are good at teaching, not just research, but teaching. The field program will be cost way down compared to other projects, with the mean spending on the trophies are going to purchase to give to the winning professors. I believe they will be asking few $1,000s at most, and SAG will probably, hopefully, propose that next week.
But I can speak a little bit to SAG's thing. If you want, I can talk about it. If you want.
I think that's a great idea. I've always wanted there to be an Associated Students best teacher, best lecturer type award. I'm glad that somebody is taking the mantle on that. That's awesome. Napkin math here. If we wanted to do, here's one really extreme proposal. I'm suggesting this so that we have an option here. You don't need to say it. We have 127 in unallocated. Somebody confirm whether we have 56 or 58 in HIP, please. But in the meantime, I'm going to assume 56. We take 100 out of unallocated, adjusted into HIP. We have 156 to spend in HIP. We allocate 54 to the mobile food bank. That gives us 102. We allocate 65. I'm rounding up here. Or let's call it 62 for ease to the piano. That leaves us with 40. We allocate 5 to the best lecturer award, and then that leaves us with 35, and then 35 is left for the high impact project competition at large. That's kind of the most bullish proposal in terms of expenditures. And that's 27 left and unallocated for the rest of the quarter.
There's
And
58.
58, okay, so 29 left in unallocated for the rest of the quarter. Can I get some immediate reactions? How do people feel about that?
I think it's long.
60K left over is kind of wild.
29.
29 is set and allocated 30,000 in HIP. And do you think we're gonna actually spend all 30,000 of the HIP fund for just the competition?
I see what you're saying. Maybe.
Because I'm just thinking, I'm like, wow, 60,000 left for the entire year.
Like you get some more stuff.
Fair point.
Don't get me wrong, the basic needs vending machine is still a project that's ongoing. It's just that I wanted to cover this a little bit more in my report, but we're planning on coming up with that project proposal pretty soon too.
We can, then we
I
can,
just want to mention
So-
that it's also.
Do you know the ballpark cost of that?
But Dr. Marquez wouldn't have a better answer for that.
It's wide range. So we have the research now, but it could it depends.
This could be electrical.
It's for the partnership with CD Health to be able to distribute health related, items. It really, I mean, we just looked into what the actual machine would look like, and then a whole other project is vending machine outside of that also. Yeah. So it's not the way it is.
For specifics, it'd be anywhere between like, on the low end would be around 7K, to my understanding. But 7K, that doesn't include like, I guess, the stocking of items, that just includes the cost of the machine itself. To high end, maybe like.
Okay, I'll let other people talk, but then I have some.
Also, to factor in, if you're writing down numbers, I know the Commission on Student Wellbeing might be asking us for a little bit of funding. They're doing some really like big projects that will impact the whole student body. It would be like less than 10, no, probably like 5 to 7,000.
Only Mike can confirm the numbers. We got 58K hip and 123 and unallocated. 123, yeah.
So that's, yeah. What was that?
I think 35 for the like, basically just trying to get people to submit projects might be a little much, especially since we only have 9 months left of this year. It's kind of putting people in like a tight punch. And it also doesn't give them a lot of time to actually implement their projects this year. And also, just only having 27,000 left is kind of low, in my opinion. That makes me a little nervous considering we still have the rest of this term to fill the rest of this year. So I would like, I don't know about maybe moving 100,000. I'd say we should probably leave at least like 50 and unallocated, just considering like right off the bat, vending machine, what, like 10K, the org wants to do something 10K. So it's going to drop really quickly. And I think 20,000 is just too low.
If we did like 20 for the, well, competition.
I guess what I'm thinking is like, I'm not about to present like the piano, like, well, you know, cough up the money right now. This is gonna be down the line. By the time we have a better picture of, I think, what the piano will probably look like and everything else in the scheme of things, a couple of weeks will probably have passed and we're gonna be able to see what kind of financial picture we're gonna be in, maybe week 5, week 4, et cetera. Brian, is that everything with this, I don't wanna kick you off the podium.
Not quite everything in the sense that, I want to reach a consensus. Well, actually, I guess we've just already started this discussion in open forum, so let's just finish it in open forum. Let's, try not to offend anybody. I agree with what you're saying. I think that it is a pretty tight amount of reserves. I do want to remind us that we do have actual capital reserves, right? There's no scenario in which we're financially insolvent because we haven't left enough money inside allocated. There's a scenario where we're in an uncomfortable position and we have to draw money out of emergency funds, but that money is there. So I wanted that to be clear. Second, I want to be clear that the 35 or whatever amount of expenditure is used on the competition isn't spent on the competition. It's spent by the competition. And the projects that constitute the competition themselves are high impact projects, right? There's some amount of overhead, some amount of cash that we're spending on the marketing materials as well as the cash prizes. But that cash is relatively small compared to the amount of expenditure. The expenditure mostly goes to people, product themselves. Yeah, I agree, it's a really tight timeline, and maybe we want to just wait till next quarter for it. That's totally, maybe we want to lay the groundwork for it and open it up for next quarter. That's totally an option.
Since we have completely a whole new $150,000 for the next fiscal year, I feel like it might, in my opinion, it would be a shame if we didn't use all of it. And so I'm very comfortable by the time it's like week 6 and we're about to be out of here, that we have used all of the money. So with that 20,000, I feel like we don't usually give out that much money in general to other orgs. And I think it would be best case scenario if we used all the money.
There's definitely something to be said to that, in that the alternate case where let's say we don't touch unallocated, essentially that money just goes into the reserve. It's because the budget for next year is planned. The budget for next year doesn't account for any amount of money coming back into the system unallocated. So that money kind of naturally just ends up in reserves. That's why reserves is as large as it is. That's one of the largest contributors to reserves year over year is money from unallocated trickling in over time, which isn't necessarily a problem, but yeah, we are in a good financial position in terms of the amount of cash we have on hand. We don't necessarily need to be in a saving method. Okay, so right as I leave, I just wanted to get vibe check on those three things. How do people feel about this? Okay, so I will reach out to the food bank and move on with the next step, knowing that there's an informal confirmation. I might ask for a motion to kind of codify that informal confirmation. It won't be funding, it'll just be something. How do we feel about the piano? So I'm seeing lukewarm as the broad consensus. Okay, what is our biggest obstacle here? Is it just the cost? Okay. Is there anything that can be, like, the cost isn't gonna go down, so. And our financial situation is unlikely to radically change. Definitely not for the better. Financial situations don't usually radically change for that. Yeah.
The only reason why I hesitate is just because it's like the fog of war. It's like, as we get closer to the end of the year, and also we have a very clear picture, like, we don't see many people coming to ask us for money in 2 weeks. Right? Like, I'm talking like literally give this 3 more weeks and I would be double thumbs up. That's all.
So you want to order it at the end of spring quarter if we have the money for it.
That's kind of the idea.
But then I'll come over the summer and then it's like, who's gonna?
Well, there's no one here over the summer. It's easy installation, and then it's here for fall quarter, and everybody shows up and they're like, "Holy crap, it's a piano."
Parting gift.
That does produce a more realistic timeline in terms of
Yeah.
all the campus approvals and things like that. I don't necessarily disagree. I think that's a totally new line. How do we feel about the competition in terms of sizes of cash prizes, amount of cash prizes? Right, it could just be one best proposal, you get $500, congratulations. Or it could be everyone who submits get $50. Definitely there should be a bar for, like, it needs to be a real submission.
Like, if you submit like a real submission, they're entered to like a nice raffle.
Real submission, nice raffle. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, then the best ones are.
I'm kind of thinking we get all the submissions and we go, if we like it, we'll keep this project in our Senate records for later, and maybe someone else could pick this up later. If they don't want to do it themselves, right? We go, here's $50 for the fun idea and brilliant thing, and we go $50 depending on our discretion. I don't know if that would even work though.
I think the nature of competition requires us to have like a clear incentive, right? That's the idea here, is to provide a cash incentive to get people's creative juices flowing, to get people talking about the FIT fund as an option, right? To get professors to announce it in their classes and say, hey, by the way, you can make X amount of money. And it doesn't even cover the fact that the HIT fund includes funding your own time. So, yeah.
I think the best way to do that would probably be like one big prize in my mind, instead of a ton of little prizes, you know, because that incentivizes people to really pour their heart out for this one chance of getting it, instead of like, oh, like everyone's gonna get the same amount regardless of the quality of the project. So I think if you incentivize quality over quantity, hopefully the amount will get a lot of people to want to participate.
What's a big prize? Thousands?
$1,000.
$1,000, I don't know.
Is that $1,000
I mean-
split amongst the team?
Well, like,
$2,000.
cause I don't know, cause we also wanna have a lot of money to like implement good projects and like reserve money to actually implement, but as far as like a cash amount just to like get people to do it, like. I don't know, it's 1,000 substantial.
There's like 5 people on the team, are we doing?
It means you need to have your hand.
Yeah, I think those discussions are wonderful, but
Yeah.
I do have a really wonderful made PowerPoint that's waiting to be presented, and a lot of reports, so maybe we can try to wrap it up.
Sounds good. Okay, so not a clear consensus on everything, but I appreciate everyone. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
I was just gonna say. really short, so I think that- I think that project two to move forward with fast steps and everything. Exactly. In action.
Oh, got it. Senator Rowe?
Motion to direct the mobile food pantry pilot program HIP project team to move forward with next steps given the favor of the Senate.
Motion to direct the mobile, there's been a motion to direct the mobile food pantry pilot program HIT project team to move forward with the next steps, given the favor of the Senate. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Adler, we're not discussion.
Follow-up question.
Irish,
Oh, right there.
Irish, question, second, call question.
Consent.
Or consent, consent. Seeing none, motion passes.
Yeah.
Election room,
Okay.
Senator Lubowski.
So I don't have a big presentation, but basically, as you guys know, I have been, working since summer to obtain a reflection room on campus. And, with, the help of Dr. Marquez, she has found through the help of the USEN, an invoice and possibility of using the Chumash room, for creating a reflection room for this quarter, and we were given not an estimate, an invoice of, where'd my thing go? Of, $715 per week with a discount for Saturdays off. And so with some quick math, if we did weeks 1 through 10 plus finals week, that would be in total $7,865. And so I am here requesting from everyone here, from the Senate, to fund from Senate unallocated for this room. And this room would be a reflection where people can come in and meditate, they can pray, they can really take time away from their studies to really reflect on their time and kind of have that private space for themselves. Yeah, does anyone have any questions?
Oh, boy. Senator Carlson?
Just as more context, because this is something that there's been kind of a group effort. Some important background is that we probably wouldn't fund the first week, so just shave off $715 right there. You're probably looking at just like a solid flat 7,000. If we don't get the funds distributed until either the week after next week, for example, you're looking at 6,300, right? So every week passes, you're getting kind of cutting a little bit of cost. One thing that obviously we want to move forward with is that if we did choose to fund this, we just have to double check President MSA just to make sure, because we can't store items in that room. It's struck every night, and then they have to reset it up every day.
She's okay.
If she's okay with it, then that was like my chief concern, is because if they're using it to pray, for example, they can't store materials in that room.
Yeah.
So it still is kind of like a BYOB type thing.
Senator? Senator Littlepage, and then that's Vicky.
What are the hours for the prayer? Like, is it open 24/7?
It's open as long as the USEN open, so the same hours as the USEN.
So it would be booked for like the whole day, basically?
Yeah.
Okay.
Roxy Siddiqui?
Yeah, I had a question in terms of like how logistics of like use of the room would work. So like, would it just be like a free for all, like any individual is just free to come and go, or like, let's say like, for example, like 2 different student groups on campus wanted to use it for like a mass prayer or something, like, would there be some sort of reservation system, or how do you anticipate that working?
I'll let Senator Carlson.
Since it's a reflection room, and it's like, I'm not entirely sure if it's like tasteful to carve out like religious sections of campus. I believe it would be like you go whenever it suits you, and if you need that space, it's yours. It's there. That space is there for you. And so if you're a student who's seeking to reflect on their school day, get away from the time of the campus, you have every right to be in that space just as any other student group does. We don't have any infrastructure set up for a reservation space. We haven't looked into that.
I just want to make a general comment because we're on the record. There's a very clear reason that we're using the word reflection room, and the guidance of the Attorney General of this great state of California is that there are some serious constitutional issues with taxpayer funding of any kind and university expenditures of any kind toward that other thing people seem to be conflating this with. So to be clear, this is a flexion room and there's absolutely no religious connotation of it whatsoever.
The audience member just practically saying that there's already, you want to say it?
I'd just like to point out on the third floor of the center, I don't know if there's a meditation room there. I don't know if you're trying to.
Yeah, sorry, so it is there, but it can only fit one person, maybe two.
So you're trying to do for more people?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really small. It's like as big as me and this chair and this and like this way, this way.
It's a meditation cubby.
Yeah, it feels like a prison a little bit.
Floor's up.
Exactly.
Again, it's a reflection room, the meditation room, I believe, and there's another like big room as well on the third floor. Apparently, when student groups have come and asked us for help in getting a space, they have kind of outlined and said that that room does not work. And so that's kind of where we were just like, we'll try to find a new space.
Actually, it's a project example, it's a good way to spend our money and yeah, let's do it. If the senior last wants to make the motion.
Senator Shaw.
Sorry, before we go ahead with this, I do want to point out, I'm a little bit concerned about the value that we're getting from the USEN here. You said 715 or 50,
$715 per week.
right? $715 per week, among 7 days. The employees here,
These 6 days. Yeah.
Sorry.
Monday through Saturday.
6 days. The employees here make like upper end $16.50 an hour. So we're paying for 7 hours, 7 employee hours per day. There are not 7 employee hours per day in setting up the Chumash room, right? I understand where the invoice comes from. The invoice comes from the fact that they have some reservation system. They, okay, you want to block out the whole day, all right, that's how much it costs. They bada bing bada boom. But this is a terrible deal. And this is the Associated Students University Center. And us getting shafted with this ridiculous deal is insulting, honestly. We could spend the same amount of money, roughly speaking, reserving ILP lecture halls during the entirety of finals week for studying, which would serve literally thousands of students. I want to negotiate for a better deal with the USEN before funding personally, although I do understand that there's time sensitivity here. I also don't love the idea of doing this for 1 quarter with no plan of how to do it permanently, because it creates false expectations. And no matter how much we communicate this is temporary, come fall, people will be sad to see that there is no permanent solution. So I'm a little concerned on those points.
If I may respond, unless you. So in our meetings, with other senators and, with Dr. Marquez and Katya Armistead, we've had a few meetings, we've had a lot of trouble finding space on campus that would provide this much time and for this purpose. So that's why or at least we personally thought in the last meeting that we would give this quarter a chance to see what it's like. And then go from there in asking, coalition building and also finding other resources and showing how this worked. If you want to add it.
There is an idea, as we spoke earlier about coalition building, is trying to ask other DCUs how much it costs. But it's like easiest to send an allocated and pay up front and then say, hey guys, but I understand as well that it's kind of iffy to go about that without prior previously already getting that funding and then just distributing it out from ours. I've got nothing.
I guess I should ask the question this way. How many students a week do you need to use this space for this to feel like a good deal for you?
40 every day is how many students that we were told that MSA uses that space in a way that we don't say.
And that's also not counting other students that we don't have in the district.
I mean, honestly, I don't think $700 a week is that bad of a deal, considering if we get the room like full time. But how would you promote this is like also my question. would they be able to post about it or like email or? Because otherwise I feel like people aren't gonna know about it.
One of my key concerns with the price is that it's literally as expensive as I love us to rent. And like, you could rent out my house for that amount of money. And so it's like, part of me was wondering like, why don't we just lease out a building? Or like, instead of the USEN, let's have a building forever. Not forever, for a year, and then you pay the exact same unit rate, and it's like $150 a month, like a week. It's just, it's a complicated issue because we've been through discussions with department after department after department, and they've all said, no, we have no space. No, we have 0 rooms. No, we have nothing to give you. And every single time that we're kind of rerouted back around campus, the only thing that we can do is ultimately pay money, some type of rental fee to hold the space. And so it kind of breaks my heart because I'm like, we literally paid for this building. And we can't say this room now hereby dedicated, fucking stamp a thing on the wall, nail it in the, you know, it really is kind of disheartening. I know that governments in the past have done it, but we can look and try to negotiate for a better deal because for a lot of people, it doesn't seem like super comfortable. And so I think that would be a way to go. We'll try to negotiate a better deal. And we'll see what we can do.
Senator Rowe.
I agree, and I know you guys have put in like a lot of time and effort into like negotiating and finding a space that was viable, as a reflection space. Maybe if we kind of talk about like a number that we would be comfortable paying for, because it seems like the reality is we're gonna have to pay for a space. Maybe that would be a good negotiating point. I don't know if Dr. Marquez has any insight on if efforts like that have been successful in the past in negotiating with the USEN on their rates, but, it seems like this is definitely something that we know we're gonna have to spend money on, and most of us seem willing to spend money on it. So just kind of talking about how much money, seems like a place we could start in negotiation.
Senator Zalto, Sean.
One small question. So how large is the true mushroom?
With our, like, I guess, deal, it's $715 per week.
No, I mean, how large? That's
Oh.
area.
Oh, how large?
Yeah.
Sorry, I have that here.
So like,
It can fit over 200 people in there, but let me see.
Anna?
Over 200. That's what it says on the website.
so it's about, so compared to this room, how many times bigger do you think it?
It's like half the size. It's like
I think
I think maybe put chair by chairs.
Sure, which one's the nice one? I think there was two.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Marquez.
So, Ian just looked it up, it's 24, I think what they were doing is aggregating, how many folks, over a period of time. And just to answer the prior question, I didn't go into any negotiations and I didn't ask the USEN governing board for any agreement or anything. I think the university's space is actually prioritized for academic and research purposes overall. As you all know, even within the USEN, going from this room to a larger room, it takes a lot. And it takes money, for sure. So that's the tricky part. I think if there's already a committee that's been working on this, maybe direction from the Senate. If the chair agrees, is maybe a range of X to Y. And see if that's agreeable. So that we can negotiate. I've started to negotiate and I'm like, well, it's not really my place. So I'll come back to this, but I think there's room there because there are data that I didn't explore in terms of how much do you mention you have a room use, you know? And so there are access. We just haven't explored them. And partially because it's been a high need that hasn't been done, right?
Is the Two Mushroom the smallest?
It's the room where we had our retreat
700 for that?
for the week. It's making a reservation that is not changeable. And so kind of like flying a room, you know, we get to be here at the expense of everyone else wanting to. So.
Okay. I don't know if this person. Senator Rowe.
Okay, I know we wanna wrap this up for time's sake, but, I think that that's a really good starting point, maybe, like, I'm sure that the room isn't every day, or probably even once a week. So it seems like it's a good negotiation point to say, like, you're already gonna be making money by us booking this consistently for the next 10 weeks. So maybe we can revisit this after these conversations, I'd also be happy to help and like extend my time and energy in any way I can.
I just happen to sit on the USEN Gov board. I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Senator Shulman.
I also think that this is a question on a permanent solution. This is a question of allocation, not rental. And I think that there's a snake eating its own tail here of us paying for what exactly? Like, where is this money going? What, we've taken dollars out of our account and we've given them to their account. And they've spent, optimistically an hour of employee time, but like really it's much less than an hour of employee time. Cleaning the room in the morning. If we're holding a consistent reservation, there's no setup or de-setup. It's literally one cleaning of the room in the morning. It's a very small room. This money is being, there's no better word, wasted, right? Like this is money that's administratively, they require it through their own processes. But it's not going anywhere. We're putting up in a heap and burning it. And I'm really concerned about that sort of expenditure. And in general, I think we should be negotiate as much as possible. I think that I agree with Senator Rowe that we should step back, negotiate the rate and get a better deal here. Just because we're not getting an appropriate amount back for what we're expending. Especially when we're talking about a fairly small group of students, as you said, that are using this space consistently. That doesn't mean that there's plenty of our projects only focus on a small group of students. But if they do focus on a small group of students, they need to be definitely cost effective. Also want to bring up that Senator Carlson didn't say anything, didn't put anything on the agenda, but does have a very long presentation in the funding request. So,
Senator Zah.
Yeah, really great. And I understand that price is high and negotiation may be needed. But I also think we need to get the data of how many students will be using this reflection room. So if I can, I would like to propose a compromise for us to pay maybe for 2 weeks of rent for the moment. Then while we can continue to negotiate, we can also get the data on how many students will actually use it.
Senator Rowe.
I'm kind of hesitant to do that because it's almost giving us the rate that they've already given us. Like, if we're willing to pay for 2 weeks, they might as well just say like, no, this is our rate. We're staying firm with it for the next 10, which we know we don't want to spend. I agree that like, obviously being timely in this situation is extremely important, but I do think the week of like negotiating will really lower the cost and make this a more sustainable solution overall that can last a longer amount of time and benefit more students.
Who's open?
The choice is yours.
Okay. Oh no, unless you have a
Oh,
question.
sorry.
just as a data point, I want to point out that a prefab office space trailer, like the ones that TAs and ULAs work out of in some of the departments, on the cheaper end cost about $7,000 for a semi-permanent structure.
Damn.
Right, so the rent that we're paying here is just astronomical, it's absurd, right? And I am concerned about paying $1,500 for 2 weeks of a small room. When I actually wanted to ask you, do you know what ended up happening with the bike shop space after they moved out?
The ones with-
Last year?
Recycling and.
Recycling moved in there?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I hope someone moved in.
Yeah.
Space is at a premium here.
It is.
Senator Lopez.
Would it be possible to rent out a gym or something and maybe get a few days or hours a week and offer that?
So I reached out to Robinson Gym and they told me a flat out no. And then the dance department, they need their dance studio. So, and then the rec center is mostly booked, so.
Senator Yamiche.
I think just to add on to that, from what I was hearing while sitting in the meetings, I think the big thing is it wants to be closer to the middle of campus, so it's more easily accessible, the rec center and all that's a little bit more out of the on campus aspect.
In the hubbub, but out of the hubbub,
I think at the moment, for the sake of time, the best thing we can do is, of course, we are going to negotiate, but the best thing we can do is vote on the 2 weeks rent, and then we can have an answer and we can continue working on it. If you agree.
Um. I personally. Would rather table it, so then we can hash out negotiations and whatnot.
Sounds good. Motion to table at reflection room found by me.
There's been a motion to table the reflection room action item for 1 week. Is there a second? Second by Lebowski, we're not discussion. Call the question. All right, call the question, Jack, call the question.
Consent.
Consent, Jack, consent. Seeing none, motion passes.
Can we approve minutes?
Yes.
Motion to approve minutes and allocations.
There's been a motion to approve minutes and allocations. Second,
Bundles.
bundle improvements and allocations. Is there a second by Senator Paulson, on discussion?
Call the question.
All right, call the question, Jack, call the question.
Consent.
Consent, seeing none, motion passes. Senator Shaw, before you make the motion on
Yeah.
appointments, sorry. Senator Broadway, oh, I'll just make the recommendation, with the passing of the, what was it called?
The Black Empowerment Task Force.
The Black Empowerment Task Force. I'd like to recommend the appointments of Natalie Broadway as chair, Alexa Butler as vice chair, Jeffrey Adler as senator. Yeah, and Gabriel Salazar as senator.
Well, you can make it.
Yeah.
Also, so Senator Gabrielson, you might see her resignation is on this week's agenda. I just wanted to tell you guys, she graduated early. I don't know if she talked to you guys all, but like, very sad to see her go. She said that she still wants to be like present and come to a meeting, maybe. I told her she's invited to bondings. But definitely reach out to her and like tell her you appreciate her time, because I know I did.
Good catch.
As Bill said, the vice chair has resigned.
Yeah, can I like, do I have to like?
Can we do it?
You can go like next week, okay.
Senator Lopez?
I do have a question about the appointments. So for the removal, I just want to make sure, like, are there any specific steps that, like, election board or like the liaison has to do in order to make sure that everything was like followed through correctly? Because I want to make sure we're not, I mean, obviously I believe, but I want to make sure we're like not removing someone who shouldn't be removed.
Senator Adler?
Yeah, I mean, in consultation with Caesar, we emailed, reached out, all available facets that we knew to engage in, we did, and didn't hear anything, so. I don't know, Caesar, if you want to speak on it more, you can, but we, reached out, nothing back,
Yeah, I mean, so I've reached out, Marissa's reached out, via, I don't think we're able to tell if they've activated their AS email. But attempts to reach them through, their personal UCSB email account have gone unanswered. And like I said, like, I don't like to do these types of things where it's like punitive or removing in nature, but we have to do things in a way where we can meet quorum with membership that we have. And if there are additional applicants for election board interim, then we do need to fill those seats. Because the more manpower that we have, or the more people that we have on the board, the easier it is for us to conduct the business that we have in front of us. So yeah, like I said, like it's not fun for me, just as it's not fun for the Senate to consider the removal of someone, but that's kind of, we have no other choice, basically.
Senator Zah?
I have three very somewhat important things to say. First of all, please sign up for the AS Olympic. And second, can I ask the honorary committee how it's the vote on the regularly?
Yeah, I mean, I just sent out a when to meet, and I'm going to two separate meetings. One to just deal with what we have, and then after the new forms with the retroactive honoraria. Trying to open retroactive by the end of the week, if we can get the new forms in by then.
Sounds great. And certainly, if you look into the appointment of the Senate, you'll see I'm resigning from the leadership committee. Yeah, it was a good committee with good people, but at the moment, I just want to know more about the financial side of AS. For the vacant vice chair position, I think there's no better better candidate at senator examination. She is a veteran human being and exceptional senator. I think she will do great on that role. That's if the, so I recommend LP to appoint her.
Sounds good to me.
That's all.
I just want to make that motion. Senator Zhao.
Motion to add appointment of Senator Yamanishi as the vice chair of liaison committee.
There's been a motion to add the appointment of Senator Yamanishi as a member of the liaison committee.
Vice chair.
Oh, vice chair, sorry, vice chair of liaison committee. Second by Carlson, on discussion. I call question, objective, call question.
Consent.
Objection, consent. Seeing none, motion passes. What's up? There's a
Motion to bundle our appointment resignations, removals with additions.
there's all.
You need a vote on removals. I think it's easier to do bundle appointments and resignations and then remove them separately. I have it all drafted here. Can I just do it? Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Senator Shaw.
Did your motion?
There's all.
Motion to bundle and approve all appointments and resignations with addition.
Second.
There's been a motion to bundle and approve all
Appointments and resignations.
appointments and resignations with additions. There a second?
Second
by Adler, we're not discussion.
Call the question.
All right, call the question, objection for the question.
Consent.
Consent. Seeing none, motion passes. Was open.
Can you? Who seconded, who made the motion for Senator Yamanishi as vice chair
Senator Zah.
Yeah.
and seconded?
Carlson.
Carlson. Can you put this motion past, please?
I just considered it.
Okay, great. Motion to approve the removal of Fareed Hodge as general member of the elections board. This will take a vote.
Do we have a vote?
Via hand vote.
There's been a motion to approve the removal of Fareed Hodge as general member of the elections board by a hand vote. Is there a second? Second by Carlson, we'll have discussion. Second, objection, call question. All right, consent, objection, consent. Seeing none, motion passes. Yes, no's, abstains. Yeses. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. No's. 0. Abstentions. 1. 14-0 passes. Floor is open. Senator Rowe.
Motion to recognize Senator Nicole Gabrielson for dedicated service to the Fourth Senate as off-campus senator. Congratulations on her graduation with a BA in political science and wish her good luck in her future plans.
There's been a motion to recognize Senator Nicole Gabrielson for dedicated service to 7-foot Senate as an off-campus senator. Congratulations on her graduation with a BA in political science and wish her good luck in her future plans. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Rowe, we're now discussion.
Question.
I hear call the question, objection to call the question.
Consent.
Consent. Objection to consent. Seeing none, motion passes. Floor is open. Senator Little Page.
Instead of saying the member is removed, can we just say the motion passes? I feel like that's.
Sure.
Floor is open. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I have my.
With all the actual business, do you want to put it on the agenda or is this like a?
I mean,
We can vote.
Okay, so. Hey, June, if you do the honors, I just sent everybody in their group me and in their Slack, a link that Billy had me send. You guys aren't signing up for AS Olympics. Why not? I'm gonna wheelbarrow you guys, we can compete, it'll be fun. Make sure you guys do that, please do. Now, what we have on the image here today is the Spring Memorial, and this is what I've been working on since we passed that resolution in winter quarter. And this is kind of a culmination of efforts from different students, like quote unquote non-AS students, non-really affiliated in the honorary earning world, but yeah. So Mingjun, if you'd like, right there is a project proposal that you can scan. It links it to the Google Docs. You can keep it saved if you'd like. It's still kind of being drafted, but we have a lot of the info on there. I met with AS staff earlier today and we have some updates to it, namely just the location of where we plan on doing these things. And so please scan and give it a read and we'll go from there. Let me see if I'll share. Yes, I'll do that right now. Anyone with the link should be able to open it now. So thank you. All right, next slide, Mingjun. So we have a 4-part plan. These are changes. So if you see any like weird discrepancies, pay no mind, it was made earlier this week, and we had changes made to it last minute today. Now, we have 3 areas, support park plan, we have 3 main areas where we plan on doing this memorial. And so the entire goal of this project is to embrace, to empower, and to engage the student body. For the last quarter, I sought approval, and we have since established it. It's a library exhibit located at the Davidson Library on the mountainside, right outside Arts and Architecture. This will serve as a place for us to provide historical perspective of the tragedy that happened 10 years ago. Now, does anybody know what tragedy that is? We've discussed it. Good. Glad to see I see some raised hands. Now, at this place, we will be using previously approved materials from the library's special research collections. They have been vetted and approved by families. They will include biographies and photographs of the victims that were lost. It'll also include likely an origami stand. You can, next slide, please, Mr. Meakin. And that is going to be the location located in the library. And next slide, Meakin. And those are some kind of mock-ups of the things that we've been using. You can see how we have 2 glass artifacts cases. We'll have 6 biographies, and then we're going to be using 2 undesignated memorial boards, original memorial boards from created by our very own Aaron Jones 10 years ago. And then these, next slide is perfect. These are some artifacts actually made 10 years ago. These were rocks found at various memorial sites located in Isla Vista, and the 2 hearts that you see made among many others were made by Isla Vista school children. They're adorable, and we will have them on display in those glass artifacts cases for you guys to bear witness to, again, the history that we are a part of. Next slide. Now, this one is going to be the AS Annex. There's some kind of changes being made here. I met with Sean today and Chelsea today. And what we're planning on doing is taking out our vinyl reproductions of the original boards, memorial boards, staking them to the ground and kind of adorning them with blue LEDs. For those who don't know, blue LEDs are very signature to UCSB. The professor who literally invented the blue LED still lives and goes here. He won the Nobel Prize for it back in 2014. It's the reason why you have Blu-ray. It's the reason why we have LED lights. It has electrified our world. In fact, in 2014, later that year, we had the same exact memorial. It was a memorial actually sponsored by this organization called Blue Unite. And they led a electrification, you could say, of Isla Vista. And so all of those LED lights that you see in Isla Vista, the reason why Isla Vista is even lit up in the first place is a result of memorial plans that come from this tragedy. Next slide. Now, this is kind of the big thing. We have been asked years prior to kind of begin either phasing out, unapproved materials of victims. They don't, victim families don't really want us to either tread in or dig up history, and we want to be able to respect that, right? We really want to be able to make sure that we put the people most affected by that at the forefront. And so to honor their wishes, that's why we've only been using previously approved materials, and we've been isolating them specifically in the library, unless they're under AS properties, such as our memorial boards, which we would have on display at the AS Annex. The idea is now in a more community and front-facing initiative is to lead a large interactive community artwork designed by a UCSB student to sponsor community engagement and collective strengthening of UCSB students and the community here in Isla Vista. And what we kind of drum up is paint by number. And so it's an interactive art exhibit. Again, the design is from a UCSB student. And these are just examples of what the Canadian-based company that we are using, Paintilio, that we plan on using the printing and materials from. And you can see some examples on the board. And now here is actually our design. So on the left, you see is the AI generated image that we were kind of playing with to kind of give us some understanding of what we want to see in the image. And on the right is the design that was produced by our UCSB student, Maddie Reynolds. If you stay on that for a little bit, Mingjun, we are kind of moving on a tight ship. We'll see if it works. We'll see if everything kind of gets prepared. Obviously, if it doesn't, then the money won't be expended. But this has already been produced, and it's currently having color being added. And ideally, the dimensions of it will measure in 12 feet in length and 6 feet in height. And your very own myself will build the wall that will have that on at Parallel Center so that we can suspend it and have people paint there. The idea is that we'd be able to render the image to have anywhere between 5,000 and 10,000 different boxes that you'd be able to paint which means that you could, in theory, have half, or if someone wants to share a square, you know, the entire student body be able to paint an image or paint a section of this painting. Next slide. Now, working with and together with AS staff, we've kind of come up and drum up an idea of wanting to come up to create some type of product for display on a digital archive. And one of the things that our very own Sean Lieberman did was take a lot of photos, a lot of videos, and a lot of interviews for many, many years. And we're thinking of doing this kind of 10-year from then to now of generations of communities to see how our interpretation and perspective of the events that have happened have kind of changed, how we've grown as a community, and ultimately how it has affected students today, staff, faculty who have been here for 10 years or even longer, who have borne witness to such a tragedy, and to see how we can boil it down and connect everybody in some form of unity aspect that we can then have on display on the Associated Students webpage for the foreseeable future. Now, understanding the components of this project is key to understanding the cost, and so we'll discuss that in the next slides. So at the Parnell Center, the paint by number is kind of a costly approach. It is in the, I think the entire project is going to be slightly less than the kind of sum that you see on the board. These are estimations, upper estimates of the kind of expenses. And if we move to the next slide, you'll see our funding request breakdown. Now, this funding request breakdown is, you'll notice a lot of items on there. You'll see a lot of them have zeros next to the quantities. And the important reason for that is because there are options that we have at our disposal. I said that we can do a 12x6 memorial. We can also do, if you guys are comfortable with cost, 14x7, 16x8, or even larger. And I picked 12x6 because it is $6,915. It's expensive. For additional 30 colors, you have $375. A little bit minuscule compared to the initial cost of $6,000 or almost $7,000. Now, we also have things that are smaller, water-based protection varnish. That's where keeping the image for eternity would come in handy. These images would be generated and printed onto a aluminum-based panel. So it's resistant to erosion, corrosion, and rust. These panels could technically, theoretically last longer than that piano, potentially. They're made out of aluminum. And when painted, we can cover them with a varnish that we can buy at Home Depot for $20. I would cover that cost if you guys want me to cut it down, you know, a little bit, I don't care. And we'd be able to just throw that on, and we'd be able to pull out. The beautiful part is that these panels are like this, and they're kind of like small, which means you can like screw them out from the wall, slide it together, and you can store this entire mural in a tiny little area, slip it into the youth center, slip it into the multicultural center, put it under our sofa in the Senate room, and you'll forget about it in a couple days. And you'll be able to pull it out every year and post it up on a wall simply by screwing them into a wall. It's as easy as that. It's a phenomenal product. It's a very versatile material. It's made with some type of like polymer ceramic with aluminum seated on both sides, which makes it for a very, very nice flat surface. Next slide. Now, why this matters. It is a very costly approach. It's a costly project. But I do think if you guys can simply imagine it, having dozens of students out there for a week on end, contributing and painting a project that you all know the historical significance of, that we would be able to either frame and let this be some first step of a campus beautification project leading into the future. We will have videographers out there filming, taking interviews, building yet another component, another product of this project that allows us to understand the historical perspective and how students have grown. Honestly, this historical narrative of such a project and how all of us have developed as human beings from 10 years ago, and understanding how staff, faculty, even students 10 years ago. Do you guys know who won the election that year, 2014, for AS president? Jonathan Inabood. Yeah. And so inviting people back to discuss, talk, have fun. We have all sorts of different programming in mind. I've already met with Panalytic Executive Council to begin kind of figuring out programming that wouldn't be, costly, so we can still kind of pump that time frame with a bunch of different events, awareness, etc. Manpower is not something I'm concerned about. I expect some people in the room to step up to the plate and help out. But at the same time, I also, I'm wanting to try to sponsor service hours so that the sororities can get their last, couple service hours in for the quarter ends, to see if they'll be willing to help with everything else. The total amount that I'm requesting, with about 1,000 sheets of origami folding paper to help kind of collect, and to help explain that. The reason why we're using origami, and you guys might have seen it, the Starry Night theme, is because we found Vincent van Gogh paintings at memorial sites. And we found hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of origami cranes throughout the years, also at these memorial sites. It's deeply symbolic. The blue LED is also deeply symbolic, and all of it is tied together in this kind of culmination of memorials over the years. And the general approach is to hopefully bring some new ideas into this bigger, dreamer-esque aspect of project planning, and trying to encourage student groups here on campus, trying to encourage community members to think bigger, right? Dream whatever you want, right? These are how closely we can be connected. You might have 10,000 students, 10,000 hands, 10,000 brushes, all on a 12x6 canvas. Next slide, please, Mr. Mingjin. Now, we have some kind of path to completion. Within the next 2 weeks, we'll have the image finalized. The idea is that we would have this funding ready either between this week or next week. Of course, if you guys choose not to go with the mural funding this week, it could just be the mural funding this week, which is $6,915. If you choose not to do that just this week or even next week, I will come back even more prepared and with everything broken down and present again, and we'll try to hit the ground running. But the idea is that you can kind of see the timeline on the board. A lot of my team will be kind of fronting a lot of the more manpower work. It is largely a funding request, not seeking too much out of your guys' time, but of course, if you would like to join me in this, that'd be wonderful. If there's no more questions, that kind of concludes this kind of question. But thank you.
I love this idea. I think this is fantastic, and I've seen you put in all of this work, and this is amazing. My only concern with funding right now is that you don't have a formal entity that's managing this. So if only there was a way that we could have like a high impact, like project, like team of some. So I think that this is the best in the HIP format, because the purpose of the HIP format is to allow an ad hoc team of you and your friends and whoever's been helping on this to form the team in a formal way. I don't really understand like what allocating funding we need here, because we don't have someone to allocate it, like an organization to allocate it to. We could do it administrated directly out of the Senate. There's nothing stopping that. We have done some things like this in the past, but that adds a bunch of headache when it's you doing it. So unless you want to have to come back routinely for us for all kinds of incidentals, I think high impact project funding would be really reasonable here. I think a way to do that would be to right now journal entry money from Senate allocated to the high impact project fund. So that you have peace of mind that the funding is secure. And then between now and next week, I'll help you finalize that, and we can meet with the executive director to hit the ground running with an MOU and everything. Just because I'm a little concerned that there isn't an organization.
Understood.
If you want to just administrate it straight to the Senate, there's nothing stopping that. It just creates a really like it puts you in a weird spot if you're administrating directly out of Senate.
Understood. Then, of course, I'll make sure to reformat and go from there, just so that it's all neatly squared away. And moreover, we have like a small student team. It's just basically myself and Joanna team. We have all of the AS staff who've been so incredibly helpful. It's been Sean, Chelsea, our very own Dr. Marquez. And we've just been grinding it out, just slowly, steadily for well over a quarter since we passed that legislation a long time ago. This kind of report was ready week 9 of winter quarter. We just didn't have really much time to get to it. So the rest peace of mind that we did follow through with our own resolutions. And I'm super excited to see this kind of come to fruition. I do think high impact project is the way to go, because in that, funding request, it would be enjoyable to at least kind of somewhat compensate our artists.
Yeah.
I do think very strongly that being able to say on a resume as an artist that you received like paid work for a display is very, to me, it's very elevating. And I think that that was something that I really want to be able to provide our very own UC students. Moreover, we plan on passing out bookmarks and stickers of the completed design with a little bit of description of providing the history, like we found Van Gogh paintings at memorial sites. You know, please take this little snippet with you as inspiration for our very own work. We've also had like literally the amount of history that we've had to consume covering the last 10 years is really just outstanding and phenomenal to see what students have been doing. And I hope that this is just kind of a first step to see something that we can continue doing. In future to kind of jumpstart community building initiatives every quarter, not just in May, but fall, winter, etc.
You could consider doing this out of a group project. Sorry, Marcella.
It could be a solid project as well. I had, thank you, Senator Clausen, I think that's very, it has taken a lot, to produce this. The umbrella organization that was formed right after the incident in 2014 grew about just as the pandemic started, called the Beloved Community. You might want to, that might very well be the vehicle that can umbrella the expenditures and also carry it forward, because it has a history. It just doesn't, it hasn't been an active source right now. So the Beloved Community was essentially that staff and students and community members coming together to partner for 10 years. And, you know, shaving off the last 3 or 4 years. So that could be the vehicle, and we set up an account that way.
Everyone. The Beloved Community, for people not, some also historical context, comes from a speech done by Martin Luther King. And so it has, just in general, the idea is deep ties to this kind of feeling of just like collectiveness will breed kind of like a unity and liberation for all. So it's this kind of idea that we are all together.
It is 10:42. We're gonna get kicked out of here pretty soon. We have to cut you off. Adler.
I was just gonna ask if you can go back to the mock-up of the board. Senator just on.
There were, while we kind of look at that as well, we had,
Or the ones, right?
we had there are some ideas about projecting on a historic tower. We wanted to take the messages from the boards, animate them into a video format and project them on a historic tower as if they're being written on the side of it. We think it'd be beautiful. However, it's very difficult to project on the largest building, tallest building in the county without, you know, pissing off some pilots in the air. So really trying to figure out what we can and can't do, whether it be building a surface that we can project onto, whether we can ask them to turn off the ILP lights for a couple of days out of the week so we can project onto the walls at night. Might be really cool. But it's just incredibly difficult to deal with anything relating to faculty and universities.
Just to clarify, this mock-up is just the whiteboard. Is what's gonna be made. But
Yeah, correct.
okay.
Nothing on the ladders. That's just, that was what we drew up for inspiration.
Yeah.
And on right is the artist rendition of the sketches, to which colors are being applied as we speak.
There's a really pertinent question here, which is what are you asking for in the next 15 minutes? And I like the Beloved Community as an umbrella, if that's still an entity that exists within AS, or if we still have an account number for that, or what if that ever was. I don't understand whether that even was an AS organization. I like doing this circuit. It sounds like both of those options would need a little bit of administrative groundwork before we can actually allocate funding. So how do you feel about earmarking the funding through a motion without actually allocating it anywhere so that you can feel confident to get started?
Yeah.
As we figure out the details of where the money's actually going. Is that okay?
I think functionally as a group project through the Senate, since it is coming through this body, that would make more sense. I would strongly recommend that it, in the motion, have the Beloved Community as the functioning organizing tool. Because that, it has a history, it includes a history that we present.
Does it have members right now or a board?
No, this is one of the things that Eric started, is that he really formulated the exact same composition, but with no title.
Is it an associated students?
It is not an associated student entity, it is a coalition that came together, right following the.
It was predominantly Isla Vista community residents. A huge proportion of these were UCSB students. There are some like archaic websites where you can find some materials based on what they did. Following the tragedy, they began to gravitate towards movements regarding housing, regarding policing, regarding other community building projects and initiatives. And part of that could be tied into using potentially some ideas that we've been kind of fronting is kind of as Cardinal Center Governance Board is being reset and restarted, you know, kind of died out because of COVID, and now we're kind of getting it back up and running, is helping to kind of use some of that money for beautification projects also in Isla Vista, such as the park signage, working together with IBCSD, IDRB. That was all underneath the umbrella of something you could call the beloved community. It's just, I for some reason, something was so special to kind of start up something like this project in spirit without naming it. Because now it's this beautiful fluid thing that can really seek to just kind of enhance community.
Would you be open to just making like a group project through a directional resolution?
I am more than happy with that now, just because as long as it gets done, that's all I really care about. And if it means that the legacy is something of some type of organization down the line that spearheads community initiatives, beautifying the place that we live in, and ultimately seeks this kind of spiritual kind of like togetherness and you know, and the place that we're all in together. Like, I mean, I am more than happy with that in any way, shape, or form. And if it's under AS Senate, beloved community, I don't care.
Okay, fair enough. Senator Shaw?
I understand you don't care, and I appreciate that you don't care, but I do care very much. I think it sounds like group project is probably the way to go. I'm gonna make the motions. If you don't like them, object.
Okay. Anyways,
What's does the tragedy have like a title that's commonly accepted?
I've just been using kind of like Spring Memorial, focusing on more positives. May 23rd, 2014 is very
May 24th,
May 23rd.
23rd, 2014.
Isla Vista Strong was the other, was the art, you know, the training.
Ivy Strong, Goucher Strong, there were a lot of different things coming out. I loved, when you look at the memorial boards, I'll encourage you guys to look up Isla Vista memorial boards and just read through the first panel. And I don't think you'll be able to stop yourself from reading the rest. I cry without fail reading just like the read messages every single time. I think it's incredibly powerful. And it's just, it's unfortunate that we, you know, bear witness to our most like beautiful forms of unity in the face of, in the immediate aftermath of the tragedy. But I hope to just keep going.
Who do you want as vice chair?
Can I nominate a non-AS senator?
No.
You just kind of wanted to. I know.
I can do that. We can, you'll need to.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
That's okay. All right, please.
who do you want?
Oh, I was just gonna say, if you would like to fill on that, that'd be great.
Sure, I can, yeah, if we figure it out, sounds good.
We'll figure it out. I would do Joanna.
Please email her next time.
Just let's say.
If you want to. do it.
I mean,
it doesn't bother me,
No, it's, good job,
yeah.
because we can tie into the music system.
Okay,
Senator Shawna,
motion to let it be resolved in the 74th Senate assembled, Senate Group Project and Beloved Community Working Group is formed to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the tragedy of May 23rd, 2014.
motion to let it be resolved in the 74th Senate Assembled that the Senate Group Project Beloved Community Working Group is formed to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the tragedy of the May 23rd, 2014. Seconded by Rowe, we're now discussion.
Call the question.
Ready to call the question, objection to the question? Objection consent, seeing none, motion passes, floor is open. Senator Rowe.
Motion to approve the appointment of Senator Eric Carlson as chair of the Beloved Community Working Group and Senator Jeffrey Adler as vice chair.
There's been a motion to approve the appointments.
You first make the appointments, then.
Oh, right.
Just say it up.
Yeah, I'd like to make the appointments of Eric as chair of. Eric Carlson as chair of, the working group at hand, and Senator Adler as vice chair.
Second.
We're now discussion. All right, call the question, objection, call the question. Objection, consent, seeing none, motion passes. 10:51, we should really, Senator Shawna.
Motion to allocate $11,214.46 to the Beloved Community Senate Working Group for the spring 24 program.
There's been a motion to allocate $11,214.46 to the Beloved Community Senate Working Group for the spring 24 memorial.
I rescind my motion, excuse me.
Senator Shawna.
I motion to allocate $11,300 from Senate unallocated account to the Beloved Community Senate Working Group for the spring 24 program.
Motion to allocate $11,300 from Senate allocated account to the Beloved Community Senate Working Group for the spring 24 memorial. Is there a second?
That's second.
Second by Lebowski, on discussion.
Question.
All right, call the question, objection, call the question.
Consent.
Objection, consent. Seeing none, motion passes. Floor is open. Sean,
Motion to adjourn the meeting at 10:51 p.m.
there's been a motion to adjourn the meeting at 51 p.m. Is there a second?
Second.
Who's that? Seconded by, on discussion. I call the question, is there objection, call the question.
Consent.
Objection, consent. Seeing none, motion passes.
Thank you.